Yeah. Let's get into this.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff to get into. You've been riding BMX for a long time. What, since like 84?
81.
81?
Yeah.
How old were you in 81? Because you're not very much old. Yeah, I was going to say, you're not very much older than me. Did you start? Did your dad? You started racing. How'd you get into racing?
All right. The easiest way to say how I got into BMX was, I was like every other kid that was in our age demographic, where I looked up, or every other boy that was in our age demographic that looked up to Evel Knievel and things like that, and. First bike, of course, was an Evel Knievel bike, and I wanted to, imitate Evel Knievel. So my parents lived in this cul-de-sac, and their driveway was downhill, so you'd haul ass down the hill, turn left in the cul-de-sac, and I would do laps, but there was this really awesome curb cut that was 2 houses down, and on a good day, I was 2.5 years old, which is kind of funny, but I could probably jump 8 or 9 feet distance-wise. And I remember I had just watched Wild World of Sports, and Evel tried to jump something. I don't remember what, but there was a blue 1977 Ford Thunderbird sitting right next to the curb cut. And my idiotic 2-year-old brain, I'm like, okay, screw it. I think I can do this. So I just wanted to see if I could jump distance-wise the length of the Ford Thunderbird, and end up in a crazy dead sailor, land front wheel, smack my head against the ground, knocked out cold. I came to, I don't know how much later, but we were on the way to the hospital, and that night they did, I believe, an MRI and some x-rays on me, and there was a little speck on the x-ray, and the on-call doctor was like, no, it's just, the film, there's this little spot, whatever. My dad's like, no, we need a second opinion, because my mom as well as my aunt both were diagnosed with brain tumors, and so doctor's like, no, it's the x-ray screwed up. So we went through, my parents were, no, we're going to get a second opinion. And I think it was like a month and a half out till I could get in to get the second opinion. And I was at school, I was at daycare, and me and my buddy were playing on the tire swing, and somehow, lo and behold, I fell off, got knocked out again, and my mom picked me up, took me to the emergency room immediately, and they called in another specialist. And fortunately, this was still in business hours, so my parents, they were able to actually do an MRI right then. They pulled my files, everything, since it was the same hospital, and they ran through everything, and it came back a couple days later where it was, there was some sort of growth there. Basically, and then, they ended up cutting it out, I want to say about a couple months after that. So
Was it in your brain?
Yeah, it was right next to my brain, top left side. They drilled it, they pulled it out, it was benign, and put a plastic plug in my head. So basically, I've got this quarter-size hole in my skull that's filled in. And so then, I'm still the kid that, wants to be Evel Knievel and whatnot. My parents took me to SA Slope Skate Park, which was an old school concrete, no coping bowled snake run park with a full pipe and such.
In San Antonio?
In San Antonio.
Okay.
And that ended up closing in 79, I think. It was not very far from my house. And they bought me a Norcon skateboard helmet just to wear when I rode my bike around the neighborhood. And of course, I was the the nerd kid because I was having to wear a helmet.
And no one wore helmets.
No one
wore helmets back then.
And I truly got heckled for it. And I remember being super bummed because my parents were like, no, you have to wear it. Which, I'm very grateful that, they made sure of that. They're like, look, those kids are idiots. Don't take it to heart. And so, eventually I kind of got over it. But all at the same time, my dad's best friend was Kent Howerton, who at the time was one of, the top probably 2 or 3 supercross and motocross racers in the world.
Yeah.
And he, without a doubt was probably one of the huge influence on me. And, he would occasionally bring me and my parents to races. I know, 4 or 5, first time he got me and my parents to go out to Anaheim for the Supercross finals, and then I want to say it was 79 or 80, he won a championship, and so he, they gave money, they got a big bonus for the series, but at the same time he won a truck, and he flew me and my parents out, and the deal was, hey, we'll, drive the truck back for you. And so, my parents decided to make it into a vacation, and, we went and did Disneyland and all of that stuff. And my dad took me to a bike shop, and I remember seeing a blue 16-inch DG.
Oh, wow.
And yellow tufts, everything.
Was it blue with the yellow graphics?
Yeah, it was so sick. And I remember seeing it. I was so stoked. And, at the time, we were driving, I think we were, just driving around. We were still there for, another day or 2 in L.A. And my dad's like, well, maybe we'll come back and get it. And I was just so psyched on it. And then that night, the phone at the hotel rang, and Kent had, at the time, was sponsored by Suzuki. And he told my dad, he was like, look, here's the address. Tomorrow go to this address. There is a prototype RM60 dirt bike. It's for Eben. No strings attached. He doesn't have to race. They don't have a kid small enough right now to ride it. And my dad helped him with his private track and his actual race tracks and such that he had in San Antonio. And so he's like, and I can just see him riding it, and I'll be able to tell if there's issues with it. Hey, he'll be able to say this is this or whatever. And, immediately I'm stoked because it's like, one, I'm going to get to ride Kent's track, and, I'm this little 5-year-old kid. But at the same time, I'm like, then I get to ride dirt bikes with my dad too. Because up until that point, I would just sit on the tank and hold the hand crossbar, and my dad would it was basically like I was sitting on my dad's lap. We'd go ride around the track and stuff, and this was okay, this is a big jump of freedom for me. And my mom was like, hell no, not happening, you're not getting it. And I cried and I begged, and my dad was like, come on, just let him have it. My mom was like, no, you're not getting a dirt bike, just not happening. And needless to say, that was the first of many battles I would lose with my mom, and I didn't end up getting the dirt bike. So we came back, and there was a guy, Danny Storbeck, who ended Ricky Johnson's racing career by landing on him, and then he ended up, then Ricky ended up racing trucks. But one of his family members raced 2 or something like that, I don't remember, and they had an MR50, a 1974 Honda MR50, and it needed some work. I mean, by this time it's 80, 81, somewhere in there maybe. And so my dad didn't tell my mom, and he was like, look, this is the deal. You find a way to come up with the money to buy the bike from him. Your grandparents and I will split the cost of whatever we need to get for it to make it, function. So, needless to say, my grandparents, summer, so I was staying at my grandparents. So I just went up and down the highway with my grandparents. I was picking up cans and stuff like that. Saved a bunch of money. I think it was like $50 is what the dude wanted for it. Saved up the money, bought the dirt bike. At the time, my grandfather wasn't retired, so he stripped the paint off the frame. He repainted everything, completely redid the whole bike. Got it running, and my parents had a huge backyard, and so my dad decided it was time to break the news to my mom. And so we showed up at the house, and my mom was pretty pissed. She saw the dirt bike, wasn't very happy, and my dad's like, look, he's not going to go ride it by himself. And their backyard was huge. And so the way that the frames were back then, the frame went over the back fender. So my dad could basically use it as a handle, like how the Haro push bike seats are and all that, where you just hold it like a handle. So he'd walk around the yard with me while I was learning how to ride it. And, I think it was probably 2 days later, and I was just ripping around my parents' backyard. Then the fire was lit. I wanted to race dirt bikes. But because of the brain injury, the tumor and all of that, my parents were like, no, you can't do it. And so my dad was talking to Ken about it, and he was like, look, he really wants to do it. I don't know how he can fill that void. So what they did is, he was like, take him to a BMX track. My dad's like, what the hell is that? It's like bicycle motocross. It's basically kids racing around a track on a bicycle. And they took me out there, and I watched it. I think I went to a couple practices, and then my dad bought me a 1981 Diamondback Mini, and it was chrome, and it had all blue parts on it. It had like blue Arias and blue Suzu hubs and maxi cross cranks. It was awesome. And I started racing in the fall of '81, and it was basically a way so I could kind of get what I wanted, but the danger level wasn't as high as motocross.
Yeah.
So that's basically how I got into BMX as a whole, because I couldn't race motocross. And so even back then, I wore Bell motocross helmets, I wore Simpson motocross helmets, just to protect my head. And that's probably why I didn't have a lot of concussions or a lot of, head injuries, was because if I did fall, I did have, the best helmet money could buy at the time. So that was basically the happy medium. I got to race. It just wasn't dirt bikes. So.
And then we were out in the garage, and I noticed you pulled out your little, you have like a little kind of miniature blacklight freestyle frame.
Yeah.
Looks like, what's that, 84 or something?
It was like 83, 84.
Really early freestyle bike.
Yeah, it was.
What kind of pulled you? Did you just want to start riding freestyle? Did you see that? What kind of pulled you that way?
I think there's a lot of things. One, I think I was kind of getting burnt out on racing. I think the spark was just kind of fading. I think I was like 9 years old. Some of the top kids that I was racing against in Texas were kind of fading out. They were kind of over it, or getting into football or soccer or whatever. And the tracks were kind of just evolving, to go faster, stay low. There weren't 20-foot doubles and stuff like some of the tracks were when I first started. And my best friend at the time, DJ, he had a Haro Freestyler. And I saw it, and I knew who Bob Haro was because he did, graphics for like JT and stuff like that.
Well, he had his number plates out by then too, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, he had number plates, he had visors, and, the Freestyler frames that came out, and my friend had one. And at the time, BMX was very uniform. You had, like, Redline, which was red and black, GT was blue and gold, Robinson was red and blue.
Kind of just like motocross.
Yeah, it was. There was like a color palette of like 6 colors. Yamaha was yellow and black. You know, Kawasaki was green and blue. It was literally like 6 colors, and that was it. And you know, with motocross, and the same thing was kind of like with BMX. Well, I always thought it was cool because Haro's had green and blue decals, and Bob had green brake cables, which, you know, here in the middle of Texas, you know, I'd never seen that. And green was my favorite color, so I thought it was even cooler. I was like, dude, you know, here's this bike, you can do tricks on it, and it was one of those things where, you know, my best friend had one. He had a quarter pipe. We'd go jump and ride ditches, and I think I was having a lot of fun doing that as well. So I'm looking at the bike, and I'm like, dude, I want one of those. But at the time, I was still really small. I don't think I really hit a growth spurt. I was still pretty small up until I was probably like 12 maybe, and then around 13 I started growing.
Yeah.
And so the thing was, I was so small that it was too big for me. And blacklights were known as small frame sets for little kids. And so at the time I was racing I was like co-sponsored by Blacklight, and my dad borrowed my friend's bike, took it over to Gus, who was welding the frames up, and said, look, can you make him a bike like this, but same specs as his race bike? And he was like, yeah, I don't see why not. And so he basically made it. And, you know, my dad, I don't think any of us really thought that it would go to the level that it did. It was just one of those things where I had it to go ride around, jump ditches, and, you know, do curb endos and, you know, just regular kid stuff. And then it was like, okay, you know, I'm actually kind of learning stuff. I'm actually getting kind of good. Is this somewhere where I want to go? Then I think my friend's parents were moving, and they asked my dad, they're like, well, hey, Evan loves a quarter pipe. Can he have it? And my dad was like, I don't know. He talked to my mom, and my mom's like, yeah, whatever. You know, that was a way for them to monitor where I was. You know, they didn't have to worry about me going out and worrying about me getting hit by a car or whatever. So it was 8 feet wide, and my dad decided, all right, well, let's pour a concrete slab in the backyard, and we'll set the quarter pipe up there. And the original plan was quarter pipe on one end, wedge ramp on the other. But 50 feet, you know, total with a quarter pipe and a wedge ramp, you've got about 30 feet of flat, and you're going to be able to maybe go 2 feet pedaling. So eventually that evolved into a 6 foot half pipe. And that was, you know, it just slowly started evolving into that. I think up until I was Christmas of '84, I ended up getting a Haro Master, a second gen Haro Master. And
was that kind of big for you back then?
It was big, yeah. I mean, and you know, at the time, there weren't a lot of companies making anything small.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I remember my first, I think, riding, you know, just like my stepbrother's GT Performer. I remember I'd be so frustrated because I couldn't bunny hop up curbs, but I could do frame stands, I could do, you know, almost do fire hydrants and stuff, and I was like, what's wrong with me? And now in hindsight, looking back, the bike was just really big, and I was tiny, and I could still do some flatland tricks, but I just I wasn't big enough to bunny hop up curbs.
Exactly. And that was the thing. That was the way it was. Because back then, you know, at the time, I think, around that time, the reason that I ended up getting the Master was because I was outgrowing the Blacklight.
Yeah.
And they were like, you know, you can't ride that thing. It's just too little. So I ended up getting a complete bike. I think my parents gave me some parts for Christmas. My grandparents gave me the other parts. And at the time, the bike shop here in San Antonio, Action Bikes, Jim, the owner, gave me some parts for the bikes as well. And he, and so, looking back on it now, I went from a mini race bike, technically, with You know, it had Z rims, front brakes.
That Blacklight freestyle bike's definitely a mini.
Yeah, it's definitely a mini for sure. You know, and I had like junior Powerlight bars, so they were probably like a 5-inch rise or something.
Yeah.
And that's what I ran on. It had a forklifter stem and all that. You know, it was... I mean, I remember the setup. You know, it had Z-rims, had comp STs. Had a DK... Or no, it had a forklifter stem. And it had like 5-inch rise, whatever the Powerlight bars were. I know that... And, you know, it was small. Then I got the Master, and it was full-size freestyle bike. That had a top-load DK stem on it. And I got Mike Buff Hutch ladder bars. And you know, it's totally two ends of the spectrum. You're going from this little bike to this bike that's, you know, I wouldn't run those bars now because they were like 9-inch rise back then. And eventually, you know, I ended up having the Powerlight bars put on that bike. So it worked out. And I at that point, I kind of rode 85 a lot. Just riding quarter pipes in my backyard, jumping ditches and stuff. And was having more and more fun.
Did you have a little crew you were starting to ride with, or?
No, I was really riding by myself.
Okay.
You know, I would still go to the track on occasion, but the only person I really rode with was my friend Mark. And he would ride on occasion, but he was still racing. So his parents really didn't want him riding quarter pipes because he was going to risk getting hurt. So I was kind of just riding a lot by myself. And I want to say it was February of 86. It was early February of 86. There was a local AFA contest in Austin at the Coliseum where, you know, they had Master Series contests and all of that stuff. And my parents had decided, you know, hey, let's go up and watch it, see what you think of it. And then we'll go from there and see what this kind of, if this is the route you want to go. And at the time, you know, the local dude was Jack Smith, who everyone, you know, oh, he's been to Pipeline, oh, you know.
Oh, we know Jack Smith.
Oh, yeah, we all know Jack Smith. But, you know,
Jack Smith's what, like 4 years older than you?
He's like 6 years older than me.
So he was in his teens by then.
Oh, yeah, he was in his teens. I mean, I was 12. And, you know, he was like considered like the top dude in San Antonio. And I think my dad knew of him or had met him. I'm not really sure. And so they took me and my friend DJ up to the contest. We watched it. Eddie and Martin did a demo intermission between Flatline and Ramps. And there was these crazy disco lights. So like when Eddie would be pedaling toward the quarter pipe, the whole building was black. But they would have like these random neon lights. And then when Eddie would pedal the quarter pipe, the light would like follow him and there was a spotlight. And then it'd be on the quarter pipe, it'd be like some other colored light. It was the most bizarre thing. It was almost like the horrible dance scene out of Rad brought to real life. And we went to that event, and I think my parents saw that there was something there where, you know, they saw their kid going, okay, this is what I want to do. And my dad went and talked to Jack, got his phone number, found out he lived like a couple miles away from my parents' house. And I think it was about a month later, you know, over the course of the time, me and my parents were kind of talking like, hey, look, you're not racing anymore. This is the route you want to go. And I'm like, yeah, I think it looks fun. So I want to say it was like March of 86. My dad took me over to Jack's house, and there was a group of guys riding there. It was Jack, my friend Chris Saldivar, and then Danny Sims, and a couple other guys. Pat Smith, who was a skateboarder who I still talk to, besides Chris, and they were all just sessioning this really terrible 8-foot half pipe. And I rode a little bit, and I was really terrified because it was like, one, I felt like I was being judged by the older kids.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, it's like I had a 6-foot undervert quarter, and here I am riding an 8-foot tall ramp with a foot of vert. And Jack was definitely known for having wonky ramps. So his ramp had like one of those pipeline skate park dips before the transition.
Okay.
And it was just because it was built like crap. But I didn't know how to hit that, so I would be pedaling across the flat as hard as I could, and I would almost like bounce across, like gap across that bump, and then hit the quarter pipe. And it was kind of a nightmare. I don't even know why my parents were even like, okay, we'll go back again next week, see how this goes.
Yeah.
And then I think it was 2 months later, entered my first AFA comp in San Antonio, and I was 12. I want to say I competed against Ruben Castillo in ramps and Eric Evans, and somehow I won. And
Is Eric Evans older than you?
No, Eric is actually 4 years younger than me. So here I am, 12, riding this master that's super tiny, and Eric is riding a pit bike. And
Ruben's not. He couldn't have been big back then either.
Oh, dude. Yeah, Ruben was 13.
What was he? Do you remember what he was riding?
Dude, he's riding a dyno with like those Schwinn.
Was he sponsored by dynos by then?
Him and Robert, his brother, were kind of hooked up through Scotty Patterson, who was the AFA affiliate.
Yeah.
But Scotty had originally had this thing, and I think it was called Ultramax. And he had a GT co-sponsored team in Texas. And that was like Craig Marsh, and I know Kevin Hall was on it.
Oh, wow.
And
for racing?
For racing, yeah.
Kevin Hall lives up in Washington now.
Yeah, for sure. Dude, I talked to him.
He comes down to our old school things each year.
I mean, dude, it was Kevin Hall. It was like...
He's in rad.
He's in rad, but he was he was the local legend, dude. I mean, it was like, he was legitimately... He wasn't like Scotty Patterson GT sponsored. He was like legitimately...
Oh, he was really on
co-sponsored by GT at that point.
And I think he's on Vans, too.
Oh, I'm pretty sure of it. And that was the thing. And so, I think Scotty was kind of moving away from BMX and was getting more into the freestyle side of things. And I know Ruben had an orange dyno, neon orange dyno, and Ruben was small. He rode those Schwinn freestyle bars.
Oh, the little ones.
The little ones, yeah. He rode those. I remember that. And then his brother had a pink GT World Tour, whatever the hell that thing was called.
Yeah.
And then there was another flatland rider named Ray Santian, who, dude, was unbelievably good. I mean, Scotty was dialed with that. I mean, he definitely picked out a group of dudes that were all like on the cusp of, becoming, legends. Dudes that a lot of people would, be like, that guy's amazing. I remember, later that year at the finals, like, Ray won 16 and over flat, which was like pretty much harder than pro at that point.
Yeah.
And he killed everyone. And I mean, dude, I watched the run today. We could watch it right now, and it's like, dude, it was just unbelievably smooth. His riding was definitely effortless, and it was crazy. But yeah, and so they kind of just evolved from that, and I don't know how. I don't even know why Ruben rode ramps, because it was really like he didn't really ride ramps to begin with, but maybe he did it for overall. I don't know, but he was in my thing, and
you beat him.
I beat him, yeah, but I'm dude, that's not really, it's not taking away from Ruben, because Ruben was actually a really good ramp rider. I just don't know how I actually won it, but
yeah,
whatever. And then, I went to my second contest a couple months into that month. And, those contests were rad because the Texas scene was actually pretty big at that point. And we did have, the local affiliate that really wanted to make freestyle huge. But at the same time, we were so close to Oklahoma, so we had Matt coming down here, and
is Matt the same age as you? Or is he just,
no, he's 2 years older than me.
2 years older.
But, Matt rode at the first contest that I was at in San Antonio.
That was around 86?
That was 86. He was 14 years old, and there was no one there to ride 14, 15 expert. So he had to ride 16 and over expert.
Yeah.
Wasting everyone.
Just demolished them.
He demolished
Was there anybody in that class that we even know of that went on in the 16, 17 expert that had to compete against him?
None of those dudes had competed against him, but there was like Jack Smith was in that class, and Jeff Latimer, and I don't know if you know who he is.
Mm-mm.
Dude, easiest way to describe Jeff Latimer was he was the Texas version of Monty Hill.
Okay.
Like, didn't really hear much of him, but he was part of that Scotty Patterson thing too. He got hooked up with GT stuff. That dude killed it. Matt wasted him. Like, there was like no contest. Yeah. It was like,
and Matt could have rode pro in those back then.
Oh, I don't see why he couldn't have, dude.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because it was like, Matt just shows up and he's like this goofy kid with this white Moto 4 helmet with these green like blobs all over his helmet and a chest protector. And
people weren't really wearing chest protectors back then, were they?
No, dude, people weren't even wearing full faces.
Yeah.
Other than dudes in the skate park. And, and I remember seeing him and I was like, who is this kid? Because, he really wasn't, he was not as tall as he is now. And, he's still kind of a smaller kid, but yet he's got this shirt that's like a quad XL that's like down to his knees. And I'm like, how's this dude going to ride? Who is this kook? And dude just goes out.
And he wasn't on Skyway yet.
No, he was not. Dude, I think he was like sponsored by a local shop. And he goes out like at the first contest and that I saw him at. And I mean, within like 3 airs, he's going like 9, 10 feet. And everyone else is still doing like foot out feeler airs, getting used to the quarter. Matt's just like, whatever, dude, just pinning the throttle and cranking. And, dude, yeah, he ended up wasting everyone. He did, we got to see the magnet air for the first time in real life, which was technically what the switchhander was.
Okay.
I remember I'd heard the stories of the magnet air from several guys that went to this contest in Tulsa that Matt rode in, and they're like, yeah, he does this thing called the magnet. We're like, what the hell's that? And switchhander air. He takes his inside hand off, grabs like the left brake lever, and takes his top hand off. And
which to me still seems like one of the most frightening tricks ever.
It was actually pretty easy, but I think back then it was one of those things where it was just so bizarre because people weren't really thinking to do that, But then again, Matt was 14 and doing no-footed cane cans when, dude,
maybe Dominguez.
Dominguez did them, but it was like half the pro class was barely even doing cane cans.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like maybe Dominguez, who was like the top dude at the time, could do them.
Yeah, and here's this unknown kid from Oklahoma going out there and doing tricks harder than most of the pros. And he wasted them. It was funny. And then I think that was kind of a reality check for all the other dudes because the next contest you saw all of them trying a lot harder. And then the second contest, the one that was near Dallas, I just remember watching Matt and it had rained. There were storms all night long before the day of the contest. It was like 55, 60 degrees. It was cool out. So, the rain had stopped. And I remember cars driving around because it was outside, and they were driving around the parking lot trying to dry the concrete. And so like, okay, it's dry enough, so you guys can ride the quarter pipes. And there's probably 100 yards between the wedge ramp and the quarter pipe. You see Matt just get padded up, and he just pedals as fast as he can to the quarter pipe. Hasn't hit it. No one's hit the thing yet. Matt's the first person to hit the quarter pipe. Does an 8-foot out can look back. Clicked. Like at the time, dude, I don't think there was anyone doing can look backs.
Yeah.
Completely in front of the bike, the way he does them still today. I don't know what happened. He ends up getting like locked in can look back
Which
position.
is the worst. It's so frightening to even think about that.
Dude, yeah, and I just so vividly remember it. Hang sprocket. Just gets sent to the flat, bounces up, and just kind of like stands up. Looks like he's probably got a minor concussion. Gets up, kicks his bar, straightens them out, and everyone's just looking at each other like, what the hell is this dude thinking? Like, no one's even ridden the quarter pipe yet, and he's cranking out 8-foot airs that no one's even seen before.
And probably you've never even seen dudes slam like that, except for maybe like Hugo Gonzalez, which
Hugo's crash was minor compared to this. This wasn't even, dude. This was like the way he ate shit. It was like, dude, career-ending type crash for most dudes. It seemed like, and he gets up and he's just kind of like, whatever. Goes out, pedals around the wedge ramp, and just cranks. Does it perfect next try. Does an 8-foot out, clicked, can look back, second air, warm up, perfect. And everyone's just standing there like, okay. Like, at that point, when I saw that, that's when I was like, this dude is going to own the sport. Like, you knew at an early age.
What bike did Matt ride before he got on Skyway?
Dude, I remember that bike clear as day. 85 blue Haro Sport with... I saw it several times. One time I saw it with Tufts, another time with Peregrines.
It feels like it would be a pile of shit.
Oh, dude, it looked like the biggest pile of shit. GT bars, I think GT stem, laid back. Those, dude. I just picture it like him pedaling, sitting down, and he's just like, it looks like he's all like hunchback and too small for this bike, and it's just got this massive laid back post, and dude, it definitely looked like the biggest piece of shit, but yet. It probably wasn't because I'm going to take that back because I had my back wheel blow up at the Tucson contest in '88 and had to ride Matt's bike. And dude, I got on it. I don't know how the hell he rode it. I mean, the spring was popped out on his front brake and his front brake's rubbing. So it's like every time you do an air, the front wheel's stopping. And oh, dude, his bike was. I'm like, dude, how is your bike such a piece of shit? And I almost resorted to riding Jason Davies' bike that had a coaster brake on it because Matt's bike felt so terrible. But yeah, it was. I mean, that right then was when we all knew. Like, second time, it was like, if this dude goes to a real comp, like a Masters comp, he's gonna own everyone.
Yeah, because these are still local contests.
This was a local contest, and literally, I think later that month was what was it, Madison Square Garden. And that's where he got picked up by Skyway. Yeah. And the rest was history after that. It was like, I think after that, it was like you're waiting to see a new issue of Freestyling because there was going to be something ridiculous that Matt was going to be doing that no one else is doing. Yeah. And, I mean, it was just like, I remember prime example was the first time of, like, Eric Evans told me that Matt was doing Indian airs. And I couldn't understand. And I was like, what is he doing? And he's like, he's doing no-footed can-cans, but his legs are crossed across the bike. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, but he's putting his inside foot on his back left peg. So it would almost be like you would do a no-footed can-can, and if your left foot is your can-can foot, he would put his right foot on the back chainstay platform and can over, which was weird as hell. And dude, I've got footage of Eric riding a quarter pipe doing them, airs like that, like at coping. Yeah. Foot legitimately on the chainstay. And I'm like, wait, what? And then I saw Matt do it, and it was like, no, he's actually throwing his feet just over the frame. But it was like, yeah, and then it was just after that, it was like, what's next?
So you're going to all the local contests and riding and stuff. Sounds like you're riding a Jack Smith and kind of getting a little crew, Chris Saldivar.
Mm-hmm.
How much longer was it? Because you got picked up by Haro really young.
Yeah, I was 13.
So, what is that, the next year?
That was the next year. Yeah, I started at 12. Technically, we would say I started actually riding at 12, freestyle. And, it was AFA Masters contest, last one of the year. I think it was in November of 87. And,
where was it at?
It was the Velodrome in Carson, or whatever they call it now. I know it was Carson, but I want to say at one point they said it was Compton.
I think it was Compton.
Yeah.
I think it was Compton.
I know it was right next to Compton.
Yeah, no, I think it was Compton.
And at the Velodrome, and it was the end of '87. I was 13 years old, and me and my parents flew out there, kind of for a little vacation, and went to Pipeline the day before, and contest was the next day.
How was riding Pipeline? That little
scary as hell. I mean, what was the pipe bowl, 13 feet or 12 feet or something?
I always hear different. Some people say 13. Some people say it's 15.
The Monster Bowl was 15.
Yeah, but then some people say the front bowl is 15, and I'm I think just some people just get the whole thing confused.
Yeah, I know it was, dude, it was way big. I think the first time I went, which was summer of '87, I got 2 feet, and considering all I'd ever ridden was 8 foot quarter pipe at that point, I got 2 feet out of it, and if we're saying that thing was 13 possibly, because I had heard 13 quite a bit, but it may have been 12. Even if it's 12, that's still a 6 foot air. If you rationalize oh, okay, well, hey, I ride an 8 foot, that's whatever.
Yeah. Were any of the Pipeline crew there the day you were there?
There was no one there. There was a couple skaters there, but they were all riding pipe bowl. And
they were in the combi.
The combi, dude. Yeah, they were all in the combi, and I was riding pipe bowl. The first time I went, there was one dude there. I knew I had a Dominguez strike zone. That's all I remember.
I'm sure a lot of dudes there had Dominguez strike
without doubt. But he was older. He was probably 17 or 18, and he was barely breaking coping. But I got 2 feet. I was stoked, and then when I rode it before the finals, which was probably pretty stupid, because you're going from that to riding an 8 foot quarter pipe the next day.
Yeah,
I think I got 4 feet. I'm not certain. I want to say I think I got 3 or 4 feet, and was just really stoked because it was so gnarly. All the dudes that I really looked up to were the dudes that rode there. Blyther, Fiola, Dominguez, Hugo,
Rich Segur. Well, Hugo's from NorCal, but he'd come down for the contest.
Yeah, for sure. But the thing is the way that Hugo rode that, I was dude, Hugo's the man.
Hugo, the footage of him doing corner airs in the Combi Bowl and stuff's
pretty nuts,
yeah.
Dude. And that was the thing. It's dude, even though that dude probably rode that bowl 3 times over the course of that year, dude, he rode it better than some of the dudes that rode it a lot.
Ron said he was one of the only dudes that would come from NorCal that would actually ride it in the contest, because a lot of a lot of the pros back then, if you weren't really a local, you weren't really riding that in those.
You definitely weren't. And some of the footage that that we've seen of Hugo, dude, he legitimately did the first wall ride out of that thing.
Yeah, on the fence, yeah.
Yeah, that was 84, dude, and that bank wasn't your average 4 foot tall bank to wall where it's a wedge ramp to that. Dude, that was a steep wedge to that wall, or the fence. I'm sorry, but and that was the thing. It was I don't know. I rode that. I was super stoked. Next day, I was okay, I'm winning this contest. Because that was kind of the mentality back then. You were, you were either taking freestyle seriously and you were competing and you were going to try to be the best, or you didn't do it, you know, and that was back in the contest days where that's where it all revolved around. You know, your sponsorship was, you weren't sponsored because you're an amazing bike rider. You were sponsored because you were going to win contests.
And you get the most points, or there was something.
The title, whatever, yeah.
Who at that contest, at the Compton Velodrome or Carson, or who was your main competition at that one? Do you remember?
Dude, 87 finals, honestly, was Eric Evans. And he had beaten... Dude, he won, like, every contest that year. Even though he was going coping.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing. Everybody always says that with Eric Evans, you know?
But, you know, dude, and I don't want to take anything away from Eric. Because, dude, there were no other little kids like... It was him and Greg Baycumber as the two little kids. But they were both insanely good. But it was like... How do you judge a dude doing an Eric coping versus...
I know Eric Evans beat John Bristol in Portland.
Oh, dude.
John wasn't happy about it.
Oh, dude, I was... Dude, Eric never beat me in local contests. But every Masters contest, he beat me. And I'm like, wait, I did a fake year 3 feet higher than he went. How did... What? Like,
it's Eric Evans.
Yeah, and, you know, and I remember being pissed, because... You know, granted, yeah, we were all competitive about it, and, you know, I'm getting beat by an 8-year-old, and I'm like, this is shit. And, you know, it happened, but whatever.
So you roll in this contest, you're like, I'm going to smash it.
Yeah, I was like, it's on. And I rode to Anthrax, because I was the metalhead Hessian kid, and went out, did my run pretty much spot on, wrecked my look down fakie at the end. And at the, you know, I was standing there. I think I was talking to Joel Alamo's dad. He was like, you know, you rode really good, you know, blah, blah, blah. Because my dad and Joel's dad were really good friends. And he was talking to me, and I remember this dude that I seriously thought was like a giant at the time. You know, he looked like probably like a football linebacker. It was Bill Hawkins, who was the team manager. He and Jim Ford walked up to me, and, you know, they were like, you know, hey, you know, we watched your run, we were really impressed, you know, would you be interested in riding for Haro? And I'm like, what?
Back then, like, when people would go to contests, there was, like, dudes scouting out. It's not like nowadays, you know, where people just get to watch, you know, web edits, or even before that, you know, there'd be video parts.
Yep.
You go to contests and, like, scout dudes out.
That's how you got sponsored. And I remember, dude, I was like, what? Like, you really want me? No. This is, you know, in my head, I'm like, this is bullshit. This isn't real. And I'm like, really? And Bill's like, yeah. He was like, here's my phone number. He's like, you call me on Monday. And he was like, we'll send you some stuff, and we'll work out the details. Because, you know, I was a minor, I was only 13. He was like, we'll work it out with your parents so, you know, we can get all this situated. And I just remember standing there, and I'm like, what? Like, there's no way. Like, this isn't real. And he's like, we'll send you out a bike next week. You're good to go. I was like, no. Like, there's just no way this is real. And, so basically, he gives me a Haro. I think it was Haro, whatever the airwear. I think the airwear decal was pink or magenta, and it was the box letters. There was like that, and then there was a turquoise one. Maybe one said Haro Designs and one said Airwear. I don't remember which one it was, but I know the sticker was magenta. It said Bill Hawkins, Haro Bikes, 619-438-4812. I think if anyone rode for Haro back in that day, they all knew that phone number. And I walked. You had to go under the track to get back over to the bleachers. And so I walk across, and, you know, I asked Joel's dad to watch my bike, and so I hung it up on this little rack. And the funny thing was, my bike ended up being in a Skyway ad because it was hanging up next to another Haro bike with Tufts on it at the time. And I ran across, and I told my parents, and I handed my dad this, and he was like, what is this? And I'm like, they said they want to sponsor me. And my dad's like, what? He's like, who was it? And so my dad walks across, under the track with me through the long-ass tunnel. We find Bill, and, Bill's like, no, we watched him ride at the contest. I think the contest was a month and a half earlier in New Jersey. And he was like, we're looking for another young kid.
And they didn't have Matt at that time. Matt was still on Skyway. So
Matt was still on Skyway. They had Mira. Mira was on a flow program.
Before Mira got on GT?
Oh, yeah. Mira got on sometime in 87.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was on kind of a flow program. And, I didn't know who Dave Mira was at that point either.
Yeah.
Because I had never competed against him. He wasn't at that New Jersey contest, so
even in New Jersey, he lived in upstate New York, so it was still...
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly, And so Bill was like, no, we saw him at the AFA Masters Comp, a month and a half ago, and we need a... I think at the time, it was like, well, Dave was primarily a flat rider.
Yeah.
And they needed a young ramp rider. And so my dad talked to Bill. That Monday, my dad called Bill, and big box of stuff was sent out to me, and the rest was history.
Did you get a master?
I got an 88 black Sport with white tufts. And a pair of leathers, jersey, a couple pairs of gloves, some t-shirts, big packs of decals. Do
you feel like the packages you maybe got in the 80s were cooler than the packages you received in the 90s?
Oh hell yes, dude.
Were they more epic, or do you think it was just like the time frame?
I think it was. Definitely, it was a lot of it was the time frame, without a doubt. Because one, you're a young kid, and it's like, dude, I'm getting product. I'm getting a free bike, or I'm getting whatever I want from the best company in BMX.
Yeah.
And I was so stoked. I didn't care. Granted, I went through 18 bikes that year, but
now was your buddy Jack Smith? Was he on Haro at that time?
No, he was already gone. He was already shopping Skyway, I think, or something like that at that point.
So he was on Haro and already off of Haro by then.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He was on. I think they picked him up what was that? He was on. He got picked up at that Colorado 2-hip comp.
Okay.
And I think it was like, no, you know what, dude? I take that back. He was still on. 2-hip finals were the following weekend after that AFA contest. And
the big 2-hip finals that were like the Rockstar ones.
Well, the last one at the Enchanted House of the finals.
So,
the one where Grasso rode naked.
So that's the 87.
87 finals, yeah. He rode at that contest, and I don't know if that was a contest or like it was right around that time that I know he was off after that.
Yeah.
And then he ended up riding for Skyway.
I thought did he ride for General for a minute too?
No.
Okay.
No. I know he was flowed. He was already getting flow like from Skyway just for tufts. So I don't know. I think that was kind of just how it evolved. I don't really know what his whole deal was with all of that. He ended up going to Skyway and whatever. And then he faded into obscurity. But that was all kind of right around that time, and I was psyched. It was those. If we go back to the packages, shit, dude. I went through a lot of bikes, and I think it was like every 3 weeks I got a new frame set.
Well, it's the 80s, people. Bikes broke.
Oh, dude, but I was 14 years old. So it was kind of funny having to call Bill and be like, hey, can you send me a new frame? What happened? Broke it. And it's like, he was like, dude, Blyther hasn't gone through that many frames. I'm like, Blyther's like 21. He's partying with Dominguez. He's got a pet alligator. He rides like once a month.
He did have a pet alligator.
He did. I think that thing's name was Action Jackson for some stupid reason. But, when Blyther came to my house like a year later. Did you
have a vert ramp at your house by that time?
I had an 8-foot. And then when Blyther came down, I had a 10-foot. But I remember we went to the pet store because they sold caimans, and his caiman had gotten taken away, or his pet alligator, and we were going to try to get him one so he could smuggle it back in his pocket on the flight.
Oh my God!
Even though the game commission would have probably killed him because they had already taken his already, but yeah, and so it's just funny thinking about that. But yeah, I mean, I went through a ton of frames. I went through way too much crap. But then at the time, I was 14 years old. If during summer, I was going through dude, I broke several frames a day. I got them. Literally, I would go out 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. I would ride all day with my friends. We'd go ride ditches and, go through schools and go find banked walls and stuff because that was the cool thing to do. And we'd do that, and then we'd ride ramps at night. And, mind you, dude, that's, on average, that's 12, 13 hours a day on your bike every day of the week. Of course you're going to destroy a frame set in that amount of time, especially considering the technology they had back then. It was like, oh, it's chromoly, it's going to last. Yeah, well, you don't have somebody sitting in the factory in Asia making sure that they are using actual chromoly.
Yeah.
How many bikes, dude, honestly, how many bikes back then do you think ended up having maybe one seat stay or one chain stay?
Oh, I'm sure I'm sure corners were cut.
For sure. And so...
And Haro, honestly, did a good job. You look at the travesty of bully bikes, of RL not having anybody over there. It's like, what? Who even knows what those were made out of,
Dude, so much of the stuff that was coming out of Taiwan back then was such shit. But, it was the economical thing to do at the time. Because, if you were a company and you came out... dude, I remember I had a Redline RL20. And in 86, that thing cost... Dude, I think the frame and fork was like $160.
And that was an RL20. RL22 was like $250 frame and fork in 85?
Yeah.
That's expensive.
Dude,
that's more than my Wilkerson Airlines costed in 1990, and I freaked out because that frame and fork was $210 with bash guard.
Yep.
And the RL22, 5-6 years earlier, still costed more than that.
Exactly. And, granted, that frame was going to last you forever
back
then, but... that was the thing. But, at the time they had 5-inch head tubes, and they're
21-inch top tubes.
They were huge, dude. And they had like a 40-degree C-tube angle, so that made it suck. But, I look back on that, and it was like, yeah, those were solid. But, they had to do what they could to keep the bikes cheap, because they wanted to keep... us into BMX. Even though our frame broke, it was like, dude, Haros and GTs lasted the longest.
Well, and most kids' frames didn't break that fast.
No, definitely not. But, it was like, you were a Haro guy or you a GT guy? And
I was a GT guy.
I was not a GT guy.
I was a GT guy.
I wanted a yellow GT Pro Performer when I saw that photo of Eddie laying on his back doing the one-handed quote-unquote turn bar Indo, but... dude, I wanted that bike from day one. But at the same time, I was such a Haro nerd. That was like the goal. Oh, dude, I have to have a Haro. Anything Haro was the shit to me back then. And that's all I wanted. And, then it was like, hey, I was on the team, and it was like, whoa. I'm getting to travel around the country, and... I'm staying in rooms with Joe Grotola and Malaterno and stuff, and it's like, these are the dudes I look up to, and now they're my friends. And it wasn't even like they were my friends. They were like my big brothers.
In 87 and stuff, were you touring?
No, I never toured. I didn't tour. I just traveled.
You were just too young for them to send you.
I think that was kind of the thing. I think they wanted me to be 16 before... I think that was kind
before
of...
they threw you in.
I couldn't drive.
Before they threw you into Sharks.
Yeah, pretty much. And, and I didn't tour with Haro at all. I ended up eventually touring with GT, but with Haro, it was... I think it was like they needed you to drive and stuff like that. And it was like, dude, I'm 14. I can drive illegally, but...
You're like, I'm just going to sit in the back and eat candy the whole time.
Pretty much. I would have been the annoying kid that would have probably been wasting my per diem on
and
GNS skateboard decks and candy.
And ruining everybody's chance with chicks on the trip.
Oh, dude, I would have definitely been that kid.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I can see it. I can see it. I can see it.
You know, and that's what would have happened for sure, dude. And, you know, whatever. I'm glad that I didn't, because especially like the summers those 2 summers that I did, you know, that I would have been on tour. Dude, I was riding so much and progressing, but at the same time I started skating a lot more too, which really helped my riding a lot. Because, you know, at the time, you know, when I first started riding anything over 8 feet tall, I pedaled in the flat because I was too small. I didn't understand how to pump.
Well, even a lot of pros pedaled in the flat back then.
Yeah, and you know, you look back on it and it was like, you really didn't need to. You should have just learned how to pump.
I mean, Matt pedaled like a motherfucker in the flat bottom in '88.
Oh, I know he did, but he also went 5 feet higher than everyone else
true.
too. But you know, and then you had Dino who pedaled in the flat no matter what, but he had a coaster brake, so I guess he's forgiven. But you know, I progressed a lot, and like I started, you know, I was skating a lot more because I just started hanging out with skaters because, you know, I think I slowly started kind of falling into with those kids because I was getting ready to start high school. There weren't really any.
There were more skaters than BMXers.
There was a lot more skaters, and you know they had some ramps and stuff like that. So I started hanging out with those dudes, and because of skating, I learned how to pump. So I went from pedaling in the flat every time to maybe like once or twice out of like 15 walls, let's say 20 walls. And it was really, you know, it was one of those things where it was like, okay, I figured out how to do this. And, you know, and that was the thing. I mean, would I have loved to have toured? Absolutely. I mean, I think that was kind of the thing we all wanted. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad because even back then, you know, you went to so many contests. It was like one a month at that point. There's a lot of things, especially, you know, when you are in your mid-teens, there's a lot of things you miss out on.
Yeah.
I mean, my freshman year of high school, I think I missed something like 94 days or something due to traveling. Due to traveling and being an idiot and getting hurt. You know, and of course I ended up failing and had to go to summer school and night school and stuff just to make up all the class work that I'd missed. You know, and it was one of those things where it was like, okay, I didn't get to go on tour, but still got to go to a lot of contests. And at those times, you know, there were street contests, or should we say street, more like a couple quarter pipes in a crappy car and a wedge wall almost thrown into a parking lot, and dudes were trying to figure out how to ride street.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And I mean, those were my formative years, but at the same time, I mean, look back on how much I progressed during that period. I learned so much wild stuff, and you know, especially like with my skate friends, you know, we would sit there and like, hey, well, could you do this or could you do this? And we would just feed off each other. I'd come up with some stupid skate idea. They'd come up with a bike trick. And we'd be like, all right, well, I'm going to try to learn it by the end of the night. And we just kept doing that.
What, how long did you ride for Haro for? 4 years?
87 to 91.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk really quick. Because I mean, to be honest, you may have had more frame sponsors than I think most people have had.
Yeah.
But let's talk about, you have, as far as we know, the only one left of the 89 Haro Sport Bash Guard.
Correct.
Give a quick rundown. We'll post up a bike check with it. Give a quick rundown of the story of the bike, who got them, and what happened with it.
89 Sport. At the time, the Bash Guard bike had been thrown out there.
Now, was the master? Was the master already out before this? Okay.
No, not at all. They had a couple samples made. Lynn Caston built every one of them. First one was in an issue of Freestylin', and it was painted solid black, had an aluminum plate on, like a shiny, glossy aluminum plate on the bottom. It had 88 Haro sticker pack, black with the blue lines, and it was solid paint. There was no chrome on it whatsoever. That was the first photo of it. And it also did not have a gusset.
Who was riding it?
No one was riding it.
It was just a photo.
It was just a photo. It was like a spy photo. I think it was like right before Interbike or something.
Yeah.
And then, because Interbike I think was held like twice a year maybe back then.
Hey, and we all know, well, a few of us know there's the controversy with GT and Magoo.
Yep.
So, but we can get to that.
We can get into that later. But yeah. And so they were making this bike with sprocket protection, because at the time everyone was starting to do...
You're either doing sprocket grinds, pedal grinds, or if you did have a GT, like a sport, you do the frame stand grinds too.
Yeah. And there was also bottom bracket grinds.
Yeah.
These were, doing that. I remember grinding through bottom bracket shell all the way to my cup, just because I kept doing bottom bracket grinds. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and it was pretty much retarded. But, so yeah, Bob had designed this frame with a plate underneath it to basically show like a way to
protect the
sprocket. And we were all kind of talking about it, and I was psyched on it because I was doing rock and rolls and
sprocket fakies and stuff.
Yeah, I was learning how to do, because I was riding with skaters so much. I was trying to learn how to do lip slides, like legit ones, like where you would land on your sprocket and slide.
Yeah.
And so basically, they were working on this frame, and I was like, well, that thing's rad. And I was getting ready to go out to California. I think the first photo I saw or we all saw that was probably around January, February of '89.
Yeah.
And that was when it had the 88 stickers on it.
And that shit, it looked crazy. It was just like you'd never seen a bike that looked like that.
No, it was completely caught everyone off guard.
And that's about the 89, I feel like, is the year people were riding street, but that's the year where street started becoming like real. Like,
oh, for sure.
Real deal,
That's when BMX started, or that's when brands started taking it seriously, I think.
Craig Campbell had already done a wall ride 360 in '88, and stuff started rolling after that. Those first Meet the Street contests and stuff.
For sure, and it was all around that, and so basically, yeah, they designed a bike to cater to that, and I saw the photos, and I remember I called. At the time, Bill Hawkins was kind of in and out of Haro. I think he was getting ready to leave. Freestyling, or freestyle was kind of...
It was on the fence.
It was definitely...
It was like right before the break.
Yeah, before, we hit a really huge slump. And a lot of people were saying, hey, we're cutting budgets. At that point, it was like, Josh was off GT. Dino, I believe, was off Dyno.
Dino stayed on Dyno till I think like 94. Yeah.
Oh wait, yeah, dude. No, that's right. And then it was like, you hear Wilkerson's leaving Haro, and Blyther's possibly leaving, and Nori's leaving.
Viola
had left GT, and it was like money was falling out of the sport really, really fast. And I called and was like, hey, can I get one of those? I'm going through frames. That thing's supposedly a lot better, blah, blah, blah. And I actually talked to Dean Bradley, who is between Dean and, what's the dude's name? Me and Mal talked about him a while back. I'm drawing a blank right now.
It's fine.
We had Dean kind of acting as our team manager to an extent, and I talked to Dean, and Dean was like, "Hey man, we don't have any. We just have the one right now, but we'll get you one. Don't worry about it." And I was like, "All right, well, maybe when I come out next month, because it was already planned that I was flying out in March during my spring break week to re-up my contract, and and I was actually going to do some school shows." And so, I was psyched. I'm like, dude, I'm going to California. Harlow's giving me a new bike. I get to do shows. I was so psyched. And I want to say 2 weeks prior, I had learned 540s. And, and this was back 89. There were not young kids doing 540s.
Yeah.
It was unheard of. And I was doing them coping maybe a little bit above coping. And I was like, you know what? If I can do 8-foot fakies, I can do a 4-foot 540. So I ended up doing like a 7-foot feeler air, and I just spin a 5. Spun it perfect, but mind you, I had an 8-foot wide ramp. Ended up carving off the ramp, riding off my front wheel probably about 3 feet up, but the side of the ramp the ramp wall that I did it on had a drop off on the other side. So basically, front wheel digs straight into the ground. I go straight to my head. My head smacks over into my collarbone, and my helmet ends up snapping my collarbone in 4 places.
Ugh.
So right then I know I'm not getting to do shows when I go out to Haro the next month. And I get out to Haro, and, we were going through the stuff. Bob's like kid in a candy store showing me around. Oh, I gotta show you this new thing I'm working on, blah, blah, blah. Pulls the bash guard out of the box. And, and it had the orange and pink decals. Dude, I literally lost my shit. I was like, this is the raddest frame I've ever seen. And I'm talking to Bob, and I'm like, well, when can I get one? And he was like, man, I'd give you this one right now, which was the one from the Wild Things ad. He's like, I'll give you this one right now, but Lee's bike got stolen off the deck of the Enchanted ramp yesterday, and he doesn't have a bike. And he's got to do the shows since I couldn't do them.
Yeah.
And so, like, okay, well, whatever. He's like, don't worry, we'll get you one. And I want to say, like, 2 weeks later, after I got back, and needless to say, I didn't sign my contract, which, we've discussed that at length, but it was for a pretty significant amount of money. Because I won every contest that year in 88 that I entered. I ended up winning AFA championship. I ended up winning
what
Texas,
year? How?
88.
No,
I was
what?
14.
14.
I ended up winning, AFA Master Series. I ended up winning Texas State Series for 14-15 ramps. I ended up winning Texas Freestyler of the Year. I won a lot of things that year. And, my biggest concern was I wasn't concerned with money. I never got into BMX to make money. It was never about that. It was because it was something that was fun. And, they flew me and my mom out because I was a minor to sign the contract. And, it was a really large amount of money. Considering how dead freestyle was at that point, too.
Yeah.
Or where it was at that point. And I just remember sitting in there, and it was Jim, Bob, and Dean. Oh, and Brad Lusky. Brad Lusky was the other dude that was the acting team manager. And they were all in there with me and my mom, and they're like, okay, well, just sign this. And I looked at them, and I'm like, well, hey, am I going to be able to get bikes when I need them? What do you mean? I'm like, well, I went through 18 bikes last year. Am I going to be able to get a bike when I need it? Well, if we have it in stock. But what if you don't have it in stock? Then I can't ride. So, in my 14 or 15-year-old brain at that point, I'm like, well, I'm not signing the contract if they're not going to give me bikes.
But you didn't realize you'd have to buy all the bikes, even if you'd be breaking bikes anyways.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, even if I broke a bike, like, I look at it now and I'm like, dude, I could have just gone to the shop and bought one. Like, it would have been fine. But just, whatever. So I didn't sign it. But the way that my contract was written from the year before, it would just continue on.
Yeah.
So it'd continue on the same way where, they'd pay all my expenses and so on and so forth. And so I just left it at that. I was happy with that. Whatever. And so right around that, about 2 weeks later, I got home from that trip. And Greg Neal, who worked at Trend at the time, called me. And he said that Spike was going to be in Austin for the Masters. And they wanted to do something with me for freestyling. So, because, I'd done so well the year before. So I called I called Haro, told them, and they're like, okay, well, we'll have you a bike, we'll have you all this stuff by then. And I remember it was like, well, hey, I know you're going to make it in red, can you get me a red one? They're like, well, we'll see, whatever. They probably didn't. They're like, whatever, we're just going to send you whatever, you're going to ride it, who cares? So, I want to say about, the contest was like a month and a half after that, and I wasn't able to ride literally until the week prior to the contest.
Yeah.
And because of my collarbone. And I remember getting home every day and just being pissed because my bike hadn't shown up. And then I get home and my bike's there. And I open it up and I just see chrome and I'm just like, this sucks. Like, I was so devastated. And as I'm looking at the frame, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't right. What the hell is this thing? Like, this thing's screwed up. So I pull it out and I'm like, is this supposed to be a sport? Because the way that the top tube juncture is, it's like a single top tube into a master. It was kind of bizarre. And I didn't know what the hell it was, so I called the offices and talked to Bob. And Bob was like, no, we had a batch of frames made just for the ramp guys.
Because the sports are longer than the masters.
Sports are longer than the masters. They're more ramp, based. I think that at the time the head angle was a little bit steeper and they were an inch longer or something like that. And it was just more stable. And he was like, we had you guys each a frame made. And I was like, really? So, here I went from, completely unknown kid in 1986, 87, to having a one of six Haro sport frame built by Kasten, who, at the time was considered like the best frame builder in the world in BMX. And so, I built it up. Mind you, it weighed 42 pounds back then, which was pretty heavy considering my bike the year before probably weighed 28 or 30. And it was because it's, the tubing. But there were 6 of them, possibly 7. No one can pinpoint it. If the sample that was stolen from the Enchanted House was Lee had, we know it was a black one. But Lee didn't remember when we talked about it briefly if it was a sport or a master.
Yeah.
But Wilkerson got a red one with black forks. So it was red front end, chrome back end, black forks. Hoffman,
that's the Jimmy Z bike that everybody,
that everyone, loved. Then there was Hoffman got the black chrome frame with black forks.
And destroyed it.
Oh, he destroyed that thing. And Wilkerson, we know he destroyed it because I think the first photo we ever saw of him riding it didn't have a bash plate on it.
I mean, Wilkerson got a lot of coverage on that bike, though.
He got a ton of coverage on that bike. And it was the big, dude, you don't talk about piece of shit bikes, dude. That thing looked...
Ron's bikes are still pieces of shit.
Oh.
No offense, Ron, but your bikes are falling apart every time I see him.
I saw his bars move, jumping the mega ramp, and I thought it was shit.
So who else got one? Eddie got one? Eddie Roman
got one because he was doing the Hoffman took the half pipe that year for tour. And they had a sub box and a little street area thing, I think. And Eddie rode street. So Eddie got a chrome one. Brian Blyther got a chrome one. Lee Reynolds got a chrome one. And I got the other chrome one. So 6 accounted for. Possibly 7, we're not sure. But, black one Matt had was in... I think it was in Agro Man.
Yeah.
And, I'm almost certain that thing got destroyed. Blyther, I remember rode his for a little bit, and then
he hated bash guard frames.
Yeah,
he hated it. He wants a light bike.
Yeah, and I think he rode it for a little bit. Who knows what happened to his? But I know that we got him in May of that year of '89, and in August of '89 there was that 2-hip comp in Colorado, or maybe it was July.
The one at the baseball field.
The one on the baseball
field. Where Leo
field.
Chen came out and blew everybody's mind.
Did a decade peg chink ice pick bonk thingies, yeah.
Yeah.
And Blyther was riding an 86 Sport, Chrome 86 Sport with 89 Master decals on it. So, yeah, that definitely hit. Who knows what happened to his. Eddie Roman, I have no idea what happened to his. And Lee's Chrome one, the more I'm starting to find out, it sounds like his was burned up in the trailer when the van caught on fire.
That makes sense.
So no one really even knew that the frames existed up until 4 or 5 years ago, I guess, whenever I kind of leaked it. Yeah. I kind of showed it on, I don't remember if I showed it on BMX Museum or something, but I think it was like when I first started talking to Dom, and I was like, hey, you know this? And he was like, hey, I have this. I'm not sure if you're interested in it or whatever. And he was like, wait, what? And I sent him some photos, and it was kind of like, wait, these existed? And then as I slowly, kind of started communicating with some of the, the old school collector guys to an extent, started communicating with a handful of them, and they were like, I didn't even know that that's what those dudes were riding. I thought they were riding Masters. And then they start noticing these photos, and they're like, wait, it's 1-2 top tubes. And it was kind of one of those things I think was very baffling to a lot of people, because they all thought we were riding, the typical Master. Besides the geometry being 88 Sport geometry, they were all 065 chromoly tubing. So who knows what the production ones were. I mean, 035. I doubt they were 049, because those things were terrible. They were longer. They didn't have cable guides on them. They didn't have coaster tabs. I even want to say the actual bash guard plates on ours were a little bit thicker, or maybe a better quality aluminum, because I had 4 or 5 of the production ones, and you do like 3 or 4 sprocket grinds on a concrete ledge, and it was wasted. And I rode mine quite a bit until I got a production Master, and it's not that grinded.
Yeah.
And and then also the tubes that run from that one tube under the bottom bracket are still in one piece.
Yeah, on my Master, mine are all dented up.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, you can, we're looking at it right now, and there's not a dent in them. They're scratched, but they're not dented. And that was the thing. I didn't ride it. It got hung up in the garage because it was too damn heavy. I couldn't ride it. I mean,
so you only rode it for a short time?
I rode it I rode it from May of 89 until like, I want to say maybe September maybe, and they sent me a red one. They sent me a red frame and fork, which I was super psyched on.
Yeah.
Even though it was a Master. But yeah, I had a red one.
So just for everybody to know, we're just talking about this Haro Sport, probably the rarest Haro in the world.
It could be.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, I'm not going to say it's the rarest, because there is the Chris Potts invert frame that I've brought to some people's attention. They have no idea it existed, which has the same top tube as mine, but it was painted in black, blue, and chrome, 89 or 88 model, but had the same chainstays as an 86 Sport or Master. Didn't have 990 mounts, and it had an invert decal set on it.
Okay.
If you find any photos of it, he was riding it at the Colorado 2-Hip Comp in 89. He had it there, and then there was an issue of BMX Plus. I want to say he's doing like white zombie 1-footer out of a vert ramp on it. And if you look at it, you can tell that's what it is. That frame, that was the only one I ever saw that. So that was probably the rarest one, but I doubt it's in existence anymore. But issue-wise, I mean, yeah, it's probably, I would say, out of all the original Haro stuff, yeah, it's definitely probably one of the top, like, 3 or 4 rarest frames they ever built. Besides the elusive, single top tube Sport. But
oh, yeah. And
good luck on finding one of those. I mean, Rich rode one and Dominguez had one.
Yeah, I forgot about the single top tube Sport. So, so now we're kind of rolling into the 90s. BMX. Okay, go piss. Go piss.
I'll pause.
Right. Yeah, let me piss. Okay, so let's go over
I mean, the 90s kind of roll in. I mean, I think even before Haro, you're more known for, I mean, you can't break the stigma of homeless bikes. But there were a few sponsors that just hit them really quick before the homeless things. Right after Haro, did you go to Bully?
Yeah, I did.
What was up with Bully other than you probably been in the back end of the bike?
Oh, man, where do I even begin?
And how long were you on? You weren't even on Bully that long, were you?
No, dude. I was on Bully for... I got in August of... Dude, I was... Literally, dude. It was like a weird period. So I was... Haro was kind of like weird with us at the time, kind of. And they weren't really giving anyone anything for some reason. I know Hoffman was getting a little bit of product, but... And, you know, he was like their team, but it was kind of really bizarre of how it was set up. And I was like, well, hell, dude. I kind of don't even feel like I'm on anymore. So, Pete Kearney had come through during the summer on Bully Tour. He put in a word for me and was like, send him a sponsor me tape, but I'd want you on Bully if you would be into it. And I'm like, dude, yeah. And so, at the time, I really don't even think we had a team manager at Haro. So I just called and said, hey, you know, I'm looking elsewhere because I need some sort of support. And ended up on Bully for, into, you know, I want to say it was August of 90. I got a Bully 2. And,
you got a Bully 2 first?
They sent me a Bully 2. And by October, I had snapped the brake bridge off. And the back end was twisting. November, they sent me a Bully 2 prototype. Or a Bully prototype with the vise. That god-awful piece of crap. And they sent that, and dude, literally, the first day I rode it, the entire back end twisted. The
Bully 2s were actually stronger than Bully 1s.
Oh, they were way better.
Because I had a few friends that actually rode those for quite some time because they didn't have the weak spot of where the bash guard had no support in the bottom. How long were you on Bully for?
Through February that year.
And did you ride
91?
You rode one contest on Bully?
2. I rode. I want to say I rode 2 up in Palm Springs.
I was gonna say the Palm Springs.
Because
you had the yellow Bully bars.
No, I had black bars. I had black Haro knee savers on at that time.
Oh, okay.
And I want to say what was
so Palm Springs
and Thrasherland 90 finals in January of 91.
Were you riding pro yet then?
No. I was still amateur. And my bike was haggard. Jay and I, actually Miron had the other prototype.
He was on Bully at that time too.
Yeah, he had the other prototype. And we were talking. And I think he was running like pitchforks or something. Because he'd gone through so many Bully forks. And RL was like, I don't have any product to send you guys. So then I broke. My frame was just destroyed. Jay's frame was destroyed. We were talking about it, and I'm like, well, dude, if I can't get anything, I'm going to bounce. So I think I got like 3rd or 4th in that contest, and I called RL.
And just a straight AM, right?
Yeah. Mirror won. I think Mirror won. Thorne got 2nd, and I got 3rd. It's something like that.
Yeah.
And I want to say I called RL the following Monday and told him how I did. He was all stoked. I was like, I need a new frame. And he was like, man, I don't have any. I'm like, dude, I cannot ride. And I remember my parents and me shooting photos, taking them a 1-hour photo lab, and putting in an envelope and sending it like priority mail, showing RL how destroyed my bike was. So needless to say, I ended up getting a chrome Bully 2 with a vise. And Dude, I think I put it together, and literally the bottom bracket height was probably like 10 inches. If you barely leaned and your cranks were down, you like jackknifed and you got bucked. And it was such a pile of crap. And I remember calling him, I was like, what is wrong with this thing? Like, it's terrible. And he, I'm having problems in Taiwan. I'll send you another frame. So he sends me another bash guard with a vise. And it was worse than the first one. And it was even worse than the Bully 2. It was just a pile of crap. And I put it together, dude, and I don't remember what. It like, my back wheel would not line up. And so we took it to the bike shop, and they had one of those Park Tool frame benders. And they aligned my back end with this, like, it basically would look like a piece of pipe with a piece on it so you could, like, twist stuff. And I called RL that day and was just like, dude, I can't, my back wheel doesn't even line up. Maybe your wheel's not dished properly. No, my back wheel is dished properly. You know, we checked everything. The frame was just screwed up.
Yeah.
So, I told him, I was like, well, dude, we need to do something. He's like, all right, well, send it to MCS, and they're distributing it for us, and they'll send you a new frame. So I send my frame to MCS. Mind you, dude, I don't have a bike to ride.
Yeah.
And I'm not knowing what I'm going to do. And I'm just like, this sucks, and I don't know what to do. So I call MCS and ask, what's going on with my frame? And they're like, who are you? And I'm like, I ride for Bully. Like, I'm on the team, you know, and telling them all this stuff. They have no idea who I am. And like 5 minutes later, after I hang up, at the time, I believe it was RL's ex-wife, Molly, worked at Bully at the home office in California. She calls me and is just livid and just chews my ass. Why'd you call them? Blah, 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 blah. You need to be talking to me. And I'm like, I've tried talking to you and you won't help me. I need a frame. Like, I'm a sponsored rider and I don't have a bicycle. Like, what do you want from me? I can't believe you did this, blah, blah, blah. And so, at that point, I'm literally about to go to Trend, talk to my parents, and I'm like, I don't have any money, but we call Trend, and Tina was like, yeah, I'll sell you, like, a Dyno Comp or a Haro at cost. And she's like, just call Haro and ask him for a bike. And I'm like, no, because everything was just kind of, it just seemed like everything was really kind of in limbo how things were at that point.
And BMX was so dead at that point.
Yeah, and I just didn't feel justified because there weren't enough contests, and it's like, dude, what am I going to do for him? Like, you know. So Greg calls me back about 10 minutes later, and he's like, hey, you need a frame. And I'm like, yes. I'm like, Bully's not giving me anything. I don't have a bike.
And literally Bully, I think, folded just right after that.
I think RL, like, finally was like, dude, we can't sell this shit. And pulled the plug on it. So, about 5 minutes, you know, like I said, my phone rings and it's Greg Hansen, who worked at Trend. It's really tight with Wilkerson and you know, Kevin Martin and stuff at the time. He's like, you need a bike. I'm like, yeah, dude, I can't ride. There's nothing I can do right now. And he's like, can you come to Austin right now? Yeah, I should be able to. Let me see. And, you know, I think it was like 7 o'clock that night already. And, you know, I was only like 17. I knew my parents weren't going to let me drive to Austin by myself. So, went in the house, talked to my dad, and was like, hey, can you take me to Austin? It's like, for what? And I'm like, Greg Hansen wants to talk to me. You probably need to come along too. So we go up there, and he was like, look, I talked to Wilkerson. We've got this prototype Wilkerson Airlines frame. He wants you to ride it. You're breaking every bike that you get. You'd be a proper test for it, and he wants you on the team. Which, I don't know what that actually meant at that point, because, you know, Brian didn't have any money. And, hell, he could didn't even have frames.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I think they were even trying to do like a pre-order back then, just to get money to.
When I pre-ordered mine, it took like 8 months or more before I got a bike. You know.
For sure, and so I didn't know what, and I was like, all right, well, hell, you know, and they had said that it was, you know, the frame was the same as a Haro. You know, a Haro Sport, so I was like, well, hell, dude, then count me in, you know, that's the bike I rode anyway, so let's, you know, do that. And so, I went up there, he gave me 2 sets of forks.
Were they the Botima style Wilkerson forks?
They were those things. And he gave me 2 sets of forks, and he gave me a frame, gave me a couple 2-hip t-shirts, some stickers. And that was that. It was like, all right, you're on. Whatever. So I think it was about a month or 2 after that was that big 3-day contest, La Jolla Street Comp, Half Pipe Comp at
Ron's house,
Grove, and then Mission Trails Dirt. And so I went out there. I don't know if Ron ponied up the cash or if Greg Hansen did. Somebody paid for my plane ticket, and my mom flew out there with me just because, you know, I was young still and I couldn't rent a car or anything. And so she went with me because she had business to take care of anyway. And I went to the contest, and vert didn't end up happening because not enough AMs showed up. I think it was me and Dave White were the only 2 AMs, and he was going to ride like novice or intermediate vert. I was going to ride expert because Mira wrecked at Mission Trail, so he wasn't going to ride vert.
Okay. Oh, he wrecked on the death jump. Or
he got worked on the death jump, if I remember. And then we ended up just doing like a demo. And then the following day was La Jolla Street Contest, and I got second there. And I mean, dude, I was really psyched. And then, I think there was a couple more like local trend contests and stuff back then. And I just wasn't. I don't know, dude. It just didn't feel like I was really going anywhere with the Wilkerson deal.
But the frame was holding up.
Frame was holding up, but there was just kind of a part of me that I didn't really like it. It was so strong, dude. I mean, in that period of 91, that was probably the strongest frame ever.
Yeah.
But I hated the way it rode. It rode like complete shit.
I love the way mine rode. I will argue to the day I die.
I hated the way mine rode, dude. It just was. Maybe I don't know. Maybe mine had different geometry, but it rode like shit. And one of my friends that I rode with, he had a mini ramp that was 6 feet tall and had vert, and it had so much flat bottom on it that he had a 4-foot street spine that was set up next to his jump box in his yard, and we would put the street spine in the middle and made it have perfect flat on each side of the street spine.
Yeah.
And I mean, it probably had 40 feet of flat. And he had an Airmaster, and I remember seeing Hoffman's prototype at that contest and thought it was the raddest looking bike. And I'm like, dude, I want one of those. And I rode it, and it felt really good. I felt comfortable on it. So I went home, called Trend, asked them if they had any, and they did. And I called Haro. I don't remember who I talked to at Haro. It may have been Dean. I think it was Dean, possibly.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah. He was like, we'll give you a bike. So I called my friend, who was like a year older than me. I was like, I'll give you gas money. Let's go to Austin. So we drove up to Trend. Haro sent them a frame and gave me an Airmaster. And so I rode those up in, for probably 8 months. And I had quite a few of those. Just because they were not very strong, but they felt amazing. They looked amazing too. But I rode those up until technically Homeless was started, and
Yeah.
then when Homeless came out, it was already Ruben. It was Ruben Perrick and Sheps, and that was like them. And I think Giat was supposed to be on it too, and they asked if I wanted to ride one of those, and I was like, hell yeah,
And was this after they'd already put out one of their videos?
Oh, that was, dude, the third video was out by the time that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Highway to Hell was the third one, and that was, that came out toward the end of 91, like fall of 91, and all the footage I think I'm riding in that, I was riding vert, and I was riding a Wilkerson frame. And,
in Highway to Hell?
In Highway to Hell. No, yeah, in Highway to Hell. And then when Trash came out, then right around after that ended, they were kind of already toying with Trash. I don't even think Trash was deliberate, but they were just like, hey, do you want to ride one of the bikes? Yeah, absolutely. And, the thing was, I was down with everyone at Trent. I was down with Tina. I was down with Greg. And it was kind of like Trent was really involved with it, and I was like, okay, this is the right fit. And so I went on to ride, for Homeless up until it's the way I will say it, and a lot of people will probably get pissed at me for saying it this way, but up until the end of 93 when its demise, when Greg decided to take over the full company, there was, the drama between him and James, and it was like, hey, we're going our own way, and we're not dealing with you at all. And so it just seemed like a fit. They were my friends.
Yeah.
I've been friends with Perrick since '86. Ruben was part of it, and and I was friends with Giat at the time. And
how was filming for Trash? I mean, that video's kind of, I feel like with the, you got you on Haro and all the other stuff, but you were just kind of like more of a contest kid at the time, and you're getting a little bit of coverage and go and freestyling. But I mean, that was like your first real deal video part, and that was like when I first kind of, I knew who you were, but that was kind of when you were brought to my attention. And I did think it was weird that you didn't have any vert riding in that part.
I wasn't riding vert. I didn't have anyone to ride vert with.
And then that was kind of right at the point where all the vert ramps died, too.
Yeah, I had a vert ramp, but the thing is the layer had gotten rotted because the way that the layering was originally done. The seams matched up so water would seep through and end up rotting out. And so I built a 5-foot mini ramp behind the vert ramp. But, I still wanted to ride vert, but I didn't have anyone to ride with. At that point, Steve-O, the Goot, had moved to Austin. Those were the dudes that I was riding vert with because, my friend Chris, he had kind of stopped riding altogether. I think he was working like a real job and he didn't have time to ride. So, it was basically me not having anyone to ride with, and that's why I went the mini ramp route.
Yeah.
And because, and also hanging out with skaters so much, I had, I was riding with those dudes and riding a lot of mini ramp and having a lot of fun, and I was burnt out on vert.
Did you feel a time when you guys were filming for Homeless? Did it feel like it was going to be a video that would kind of, that video really held its own till like 2000 in a weird way.
It kind of did, and dude, I think I can say it in the way that I can describe that video is such an oxymoron, where it was accidentally on purpose. It was completely accidental that I think the video turned out to be what it was.
Yeah.
I think it was planned to make a video of what we were all doing, and it just ended up being this huge deal. And dude, I don't think I even realized it. Dude, none of us did. I know, like, Tina saw the sales of how many there were of those videos moving, and I know Perrick did too, but at the same time, none of us knew. None of us knew they were, moving less. And, dude, I don't even know what the numbers are, but let's say they moved 5,000 units of that thing. dude, none of us knew that.
Yeah.
You know, but then it was like that Hoffman comp, the first one that he had at the warehouse. And there were dudes like coming up to us and like, dude, I saw your part in Trash. It was so awesome. And it's like, wait, what? Like, how? What do you what? Like, you know, and it was so, it had really caught me off guard because I think I went from being identified as the young kid that rode for Haro as a vert rider to a guy riding for the rider-owned bike company that was a good mini ramp rider. And
yeah, I mean, I thought of you. I mean, you definitely had some street stuff, but I thought of you more of as a mini ramp guy after that, you know?
And that was the thing, because, I mean, dude, that's what I rode. I mean, I had fun riding and skating mini ramps, you know? That's, still to this day, dude, that's probably my go-to thing. I mean, I love riding vert, but, dude, I've got way too much on the line to risk, you know, getting hurt from riding vert, and, you know, I have fun. Dude, I can go out and ride a mini ramp, I can go and do nose picks for 8 hours straight, and I can leave with a smile on my face.
Yeah.
And, you know, dude, I could go skate it and do 50-50 grinds and fakie rocks and be stoked. And that's just what it is. But yeah, I think it really caught all of us off guard because we really didn't expect it to be that way. You know, and that kind of goes into this one thing where, you know, people were like, I know that I've heard in the past that there is some bitterness. Well, why wasn't this person chosen? Why wasn't this person chosen? Why was this? How did they pick the team? Blah, blah, blah. Dude, there was no picking a team. It was basically a group of dudes that rode together. And, you know, I think, I want to say Trend really bankrolled a lot of, like, the frames being done. Or Greg had somebody do it, but it was really just a group of dudes that were all like sponsored by Trend, and we rode together. We all rode Power Plant on, I think it was Tuesday nights or Thursday nights during Old Man Session, which is funny thinking Old Man Session back then because the dudes were like 25.
Yeah.
And now it's like, dude, I'm 42 and I'm at the park and, you know, I'm like, not the youngest one there, or not the oldest one there, you know, and it's kind of funny because it's like, dude, Old Man Night was 25, and now it's like, dude, I'm 17 years older than that. Like, come on. But, you know, it was one of those things where it was just kind of, that's how it evolved. It was a group of dudes that rode together, and it ended up being what was a spoof on Club Homeboy started by Sheps and Perrick into a bike company that ended up kind of helping push video making as well as the way that people looked at riding in a whole different light.
Definitely pushed, I mean, that video definitely pushed street riding from, I mean, you got your first like real handrail tricks. You got it, you know, your first, maybe your first like, I mean, I'm sure somebody maybe did it before, but you know, you had Sheps doing manual to tooth grinds down rails and stuff. So, I mean, it definitely was a severely progressive video. You know, you can ask a lot of people, and it's probably in their top 5 videos, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things, you know, it definitely was, you know, we didn't, it's so hard to say like, all of it about it, but yeah, I mean, it really was one of those things where it was like, it did push things. And it is funny because it pushed riding, but at the same time, there were things that and I think this was something that, you know, you and I had discussed this the other day, but it brought to light where somebody may have done something first completely in a different area and that not been the first.
I will put money, though. The Goots handrail to 180 was the first.
Oh, and it was hard 180. That was even earlier.
It's regular 180. It's not hard. It's regular.
I thought he did one to hard 180.
Nope, it's regular 180.
And, okay. Well, regardless, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't... That
he did a look down, too, off of it.
He did do a look down.
I mean, you know, but it's one of those things where it was... a couple years later, I was going to Waterford with Moliterno, and we had a really good discussion about it. And he was like, dude, we watched your video part, and we thought you stole all of our tricks from Roger's Garage and Happy Days. And I'm like, Rick, I still haven't even seen those videos.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? And I'm like, no, because when all of that when Trash came out, and that whole, like, year prior, like, when Trash was being filmed for, dude, that was when there was a lot of flack between companies, like, between...
Homeless and S&M. Hoffman and Standard.
All of that, yeah. You know, and there was static, so because of that...
No one watched videos.
No one would buy... You know, Trin would only order, like, their videos if they had already been sold and stuff like that. So we didn't have the opportunities to see that stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, it definitely opened up my eyes because I know there were quite a few, like, vert tricks that I thought like, I had done first up until that point. Like, you know, candy canes and things like that where I was like, oh, I know, I haven't seen anyone do this. But then it was like, oh, shit. You know what? If Moliterno is telling me that he thought I copied their stuff and I'd never seen it, who's to say that there's not some kid in the middle of Alaska or, you know, Paraguay for whatever that's doing the stuff that we don't even know exists.
Yeah.
And that was definitely an eye-opening moment for me. But, you know, to go back to it, yeah, dude, I don't think anyone interpreted what Trash would do, much less what Homeless would do. In all honesty, and I mean, maybe it's just my view of it all, but I feel like Trash was the video that started the possibility of showing that, you know what, you can be a pro rider and film or shoot photos and not solely be a contest rider.
Yeah, I think it's definitely right around there.
And, you know, and it did. It was right around that time because Sheps didn't really like to compete. Perrick definitely didn't like to compete. Lee didn't. Dude, Lee hated contests. I mean, from what I remember.
And Lee's got one of the most memorable parts in that video.
Oh, for sure, dude.
I mean, I think he has the first, you know, debatable first grind up rail.
Oh, dude, definitely. I mean, he did that. He did
like a super good ice grind with a kink at the end.
Dude, he did the iceberg grind on the flat rail.
Oh, with the drop
on the side.
I forgot about that, yeah.
Dude, you know, there is that stuff. And, dude, hell, you know, I mean, I look at everyone's parts in that. And everyone had, like...
Chase Nguyen riding street.
Dude, 540 bar spin off a ledge.
Pull-up bar, so it's fully modern for the kids.
Yeah, I don't know about the pull-up bar, but whatever. But, yeah, I mean, dude, I think didn't he do double peg to bar spin off a rail? Half bar.
I think
bar flip. So it was a bar flip.
Yeah, and then he double peg grind that same rail that Lee did the ice grind on, I think. Didn't he?
The flat one, I think, yeah.
Yeah, the one with the big drop?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we could literally sit here, I think, and talk about Homeless.
Yep.
And
for the rest of our lives.
You know, and Trash was their last video, wasn't it?
Yeah, Trash was definitely the last video.
And then just kind of literally, you know, we could literally be stuck on Homeless for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
But then right after Homeless, you were in another really influential video. I don't think you had a full part, or maybe you had a mixed part in Standard Style Cats.
Yeah, I did. I had a split part with Lucky.
And Lucky's part's pretty influential too.
Yeah. So
how did you jump to Standard after that? And it seems like you started spending more time in the Midwest then too.
Yeah, I definitely did. Okay, when Homeless ended, and it was going to be called... Originally, it was going to be called Homeless Junior because, you know, we wanted everyone to know that, hey, this is still us.
Yeah.
Even though Greg was keeping the Homeless name. And then, you know, they added Taj, and they added Taj and Rooftop, and PC to the mix. And we all left, and I want to say it was probably like that end. Okay, so Trash ended. So early '94. It was just really Homeless. Kind of was. I mean, dude, Homeless was really done. We were riding the Blim frames that were left over. They had the drop top, you know, the top tube, and that was lower than the seat stays. And you know, we were doing what we could. And then, right around August, the month before the Hoffman, Oklahoma comp, Rooftop came and stayed with me for a month. Me and him had become really good friends after the 93 Hoffman comp where he became Rooftop.
Yeah.
And we became, we just talk a lot and stuff. So he's like, hey man, can I come and stay with you, up until the contest? Originally it was like a week, then it ended up being a month. And so he got there and we were talking and he was really starting to blow up. His part in Dirty Deeds had come out and pretty much just rewrote the book of street riding. And, a lot of people, the Rooftop train was going.
Yeah, no, he definitely was, it was just Rooftop in the early 90s. He was the street rider.
Yeah, he definitely was. And, me and him we're talking, and he's like, dude, homeless isn't there. What was it? It wasn't Homeless Junior, it was Family.
Yeah.
He's like, family's just not going to happen. We were like, yeah, we knew it. Me, him, Ed were talking. And Rooftop was like, dude, my dad said he'd give me some money to build some frames and start my own company. And so we're talking about it. And he goes, let's do it. And I'm like, Mike, I'm like 19 years old. Like, what are we thinking? So we just start talking. And it's like, all right, well, what do we do? And Ed was like, well, hey, I know this frame builder. So me and Rooftop start talking, and we go and talk to the frame builder. We find out how much money we need to come up with to build these frames. And we're like, all right, let's do it. So we built 2 frames based very loosely around the heaviest fuck frame. And me and Mike were down at my buddy Ian's house, and Ian's dad owned a machine shop.
Yeah.
But he had like a small machine shop set up in their garage because his son was like one of the best like quarter midget racers in the country. And so he had like a minor shop to do repairs because his shop was half hour out of town. So if they came back from a race and they needed to make some adjustments, he could do it at the house. And so me and Mike are down there at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and we had my heaviest fuck frame, and we're standing there on the tubing bender bending the seat stays and the chain stays. And next day we took them to Jesse, the guy that built the frames, and he's like, all right, it'll be like 2 weeks. And so we had bought all the material, and he started working on the frames. He finished the frames 2 days before the BS comp. So I took Rooftop his prototype. I built mine in the parking lot.
And it's which BS?
The halfway house. At 94 BS comp at Hoffman Park in Oklahoma.
Okay. So you guys decided to call the company Halfway House.
Yep. Couldn't handle being homeless, couldn't start a family, so now we're in a halfway house.
Okay.
I was running very low on funds at that contest, so I ended up selling my heaviest fuck to someone to be able to pay for gas home, I guess. And Sheps had already been talking to Rooftop, and I was like, man, do you guys really want to go this route? And he's like, and I've already got Hoffman making some family forks. So he gave me and Rooftop each a set of the sample family forks. We're like, all right, let's see what happens. And so I think me and Mike talked, and we're like, look, we're not going to do the company, but we're giving homeless like a certain amount, or family a certain amount of time to actually get going. And if it doesn't, we've got to figure out something to do. And so family just wasn't taking off. At that point, the forks were made, and it was like, dude, it's not going to happen. Like,
yeah.
We knew it wasn't going to happen. And I was, I had ridden for Haro with Moloturno. I was really, I had been friends with him in the past, known him really well. And the shop I was working at was ordering like standard axles because...
that was the shit back then.
Dude, if you ran Super Pros, you needed axles that were stronger than the shitty stock ones. So we started running standard axles. And so the shop I worked at, we ordered some. And one day I was talking to Rick Wagner, and he said something. He's like, "So what's going on with that?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't know." I'm like, I'm riding this frame that me and Rooftop built, and I can't ride a tire wider than a 175 because the way the chainstays are bent, it just sucks. It was terrible because the bend was too tight, so you couldn't run a fatter tire. And he's like, why don't you just get a standard? And I'm like, well, what are we talking about? I'm like, dude, I don't, how much can I get one for? He's like, dude, we'll sell you one at what it costs to make it. Back in '94, I think it was like $170.
That's exactly what I was thinking in my head. I bet you it was like $170 to build one of those.
Yeah, it was something around there. And he goes, "What color do you want?" And I was like, "I want a lengthy, and I wanted that color that Chris the Flatlander had, and it was this dark forest green that looked black."
Yeah, no, my friend Eric had one of those,
and it was such a dope color. And I was like, "I want that." He's like, "All right, well, it's gonna take about a month to get it." Well, 2 months later, it was ready, and I was like, "All right, well, how much is the total?" And I'll send you a check. And Moloturno got on the phone, and he was like, "No, you ride for standard now."
Because he was already starting to try to take over the whole...
Yeah, he was. And I was
and standard had been around for, what, 4 years then?
No, dude, it had only been around for 2.
2, okay, but that's this was right after the drama with Hoffman at the...
Yeah, it was already, it was kind of already getting squashed at that point. But, they were still kind of, toying with each other a little bit.
And that's when a few of the OG standard dudes had already left. And then there were some dudes coming in to replace them.
Yeah, for sure. That was like Joe Rich was really blowing up at this point. And, they brought Lucky in, and he was going to ride for Ribco and all of that stuff. And so I was like, well, wait, what do you mean? And he was like, well, what's going on with family? I'm like, dude, it's not happening. Like, I have a set of forks, and that's all I know. I mean, they made a batch of t-shirts. Just, at the time it was like, dude, James's heart just isn't into this anymore. He just wants to ride, and that's it. And he was like, all right. He was like, I'll send you a frame, but you have to agree to ride for standard. I was like, well, I don't have any other options right now. I'm wanted the frame. Yeah, absolutely. It was like Rick was my friend. Rick was a friend from a long time ago, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so I flew to the contest, Hoffman Finals in '94, and that was my first contest ride for standard. And, dude, I don't know what happened, man, but I completely blew my runs, rode like complete shit, didn't make the cut in expert mini ramp, and I was like, Moloturno's just going to straight up kick me off or tell me I got to pay for this frame set. And then... Dude, the next year I think I ended up getting like second in the points run for Stunt Boy, Street and Park, and Joe I think won the season for the year, and I think Lucky got third, so I think it was like, and then. All standard dudes like dominated. Like Bobby Fischer won for flat. At the finals was that contest that all of us rode to 138 by the Misfits, or we are 138 by the Misfits, and it was Joe won, I got second, Lucky got third, Mel Cody got fourth maybe?
Yeah.
And then I want to say Kinnan screwed up our flow. Oh, no. Sandy got 4th. And then Kinnan had to go and screw it up, and he got 5th, and then Mel Cody got 6th. So if Kinnan didn't have to screw it up for us, we would have gotten top 5. And so, yeah, and it was like, dude, that's when Standard was, like, on fire, dude. It was, that was, like, the team, dude. And then, yeah, they had been filming for Style Cats that, you know, I'd been on for a couple months, and they were like, hey, do you want to film some stuff, you know? Props guys are going to put the video together if you can film. And so, yeah, I basically went together and I filmed a little bit, and then went to a Rampage comp during the summer and went and stayed with Marco and Chris Rye, and we filmed a bunch of stuff in downtown Chicago and at Scrap and stuff. And that, I mean, literally, dude, my part was pretty much all filmed in one day back then.
Yeah.
They didn't even really use any of the stuff that I filmed in my house on my mini ramp or anything. And, yeah, and that's how Style Cats ended up happening.
And then were you in any other Standard videos after that?
No.
Okay.
No.
And then you rode for Standard for what, 2 years?
Rode for Standard through May of 98, and I went to Tampa State Pete contest, I think is what it was, BS comp. Rode pretty well. That comp, I think, was like the comp that, you know, me and Sandy had decided we were leaving, or we were going to leave. Rick had given Lucky money for a hotel for all of us. Rick had already prepaid our entry fees. He paid our flights, all of that, and he gave Lucky money for food for all of us, I think, and a hotel room. And Lucky basically ended up getting one room with one bed, and his girlfriend came.
Oh, shit.
So it was like, okay, so me and Sandy basically ended up staying with the props guys on Hank Williams' tour bus. That was like the first comp they brought it to.
Yeah.
And we ended up sleeping on that thing the whole weekend. And I got back, and I was getting ready to move to San Diego. And I was like, shit, dude, I'm over it. Like, you know, I called Rick, and I was like, dude, what's going on? You know, you gave this dude money, and he completely dicked us over. Like, blew us off, didn't tell us where the hotel was, got a room, but only for him and his girlfriend, and didn't give us any money. We were both, you know, hell, dude, we didn't have any money anyway, and so it was like, it sucked. And he was like, no, dude, he was supposed to. Well, he didn't. And, yeah, that was kind of like, okay, well, I've got to find another option. And a week before I was moving to San Diego, Woody Itzen called me and at GT and said, hey, you know, I understand that you're riding vert really, really well right now. And, you know, Kip Williamson is like, dude, get you on the team. And he's like, what is it going to take to get you on GT?
What's it going to take to get you on a GT bump right now?
The funny thing was, dude, is, yeah, exactly. But it was really supposed to be the fueler. But
the fueler,
updated fueler. And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, well, how about this? I'll fly you out here next week. We'll sit down and go over stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm moving to San Diego next week. So how about, like, the week after that, I come up and hang out with you, and we'll sit down and see what we can do. And I get out to California, and my friend Chris drove me up there. He drove me up to Orange to go to GT. And I sat down with Woody, and I walk in. You know, I get there, and you know, I walked in, and we walked through this room, and he's like, oh, I gotta show you this. And he shows me a prototype fueler. And he's like, yeah, we kind of figured that maybe we could use this to lure you over. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, we understand kind of the bike you're riding is an STA, and we're kind of trying to figure out a way to make something along the lines that will cater to people like you. Okay. And I looked at the frame, and I was like, dude, it doesn't look too bad, The time when they're they're making these freestyle frames that have bent top tube, and we're all like, dude, it looks like a girl's bike.
The swooped ones that poor Volker had to ride.
Yeah, the thing looked so just stupid and just so retarded. I mean, it looked awful. Like, I would have been embarrassed to ride that piece of crap.
Volker and Nolly in their prime having to ride those.
Bestwick rode one too?
Oh, Bestwick did ride one.
Yeah, but, every one of those dudes' frames was custom to their specs. It wasn't, they were riding, the stock thing. And so I sat there and, we talked about some stuff and potential. And at that point, I was like, I want to ride, but at the same time, I kind of want to do a little bit of product development too. Because I knew what a lot of people that I rode with were into. And I felt that I could maybe help contribute making their bikes a little bit better.
Was your BMX nerd starting to come out of you then?
Oh, dude, my BMX nerd has been alive fully since day one.
It finally came out.
I was embracing it. And so I was like, all right. I go, you know what? They gave me a written offer. And I said, give me a couple of days. I said, I need to call Rick and see what we can do. And I called Rick. And I said, look, I have an offer, and I don't know what to do. I'm like, because I've got the loyalty thing, because you and I have been friends for such a long period of time. But at the same time, I want to go to contests. I'm getting you coverage. I'm all this stuff. And, we really discussed it, and he gave me his blessing, and he's like, look, dude, he's like, I can't do what they're doing. It's that simple. And it's like, okay. And he goes, so what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't want you to think I'm a dick for saying this, but I'm going to take the offer. I go, because, there's an opportunity of a potential future with this as well. Outside of if I don't ride any longer.
Yeah.
Or if I quit competing, I quit riding at a competitive level, shall I say. And I called Woody after I hung up with Rick, and I said, okay, I want to do the deal. And so we arranged for me to go back up there, I want to say like the next day, sign my contract.
And was Woody chill? Because, you always hear stories about Woody where some people love Woody and some people feel like Woody's hustling everybody.
I don't. Dude, I will say, dude, he definitely was a great negotiator because he got me for less than he probably should have. But, whatever. I mean, that's his job. He's got to try to keep, the budget good.
Yeah.
And whatever. I didn't really, like I said, dude, the money wasn't the thing. I wanted to go to contests.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the vert ramps at the contests were just starting to suck. Yeah, they were wide, but I'm like, dude, I like riding skate ramps. I like 1.9 of vert. I don't like this 6 inches of vert on an 11-foot vert ramp. It just feels stupid. It feels pointless. And I'd go to the contest, and part of the thing was too is I was going to ride that frame, and I was going to help make it the way it should have been.
Yeah.
And I did a bunch of drawings saying, look, bottom bracket's too high, standover's a little too low, little things, dude. It wasn't major tweaks. It was stuff that Billy Griggs could have gone and fired up the Social Distortion cassette in the back room and, welded it up with no problem, probably 45 minutes, and we'd have been good. But they wouldn't listen. And, dude, I ended up getting frames, and I would grind the dropouts forward, the slots, so my back wheel would be slammed more. And dude, I ended up doing the same thing with my 990s, where I would grind it out so that my brake pads could slide forward, so I would have shorter back end.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, well, it's Taiwan's regulations, blah, blah, blah. And I think the first bike lasted me about 6 months. And, that was the hump and bump, the bright blue thing. And, dude, it wasn't a bad bike, but the back end was just way long. And the bottom bracket was, dude, it was stupid high. I mean, it was something like, dude, the bottom bracket was, honest to God, like 12 inch.
Yeah.
And it made no sense. And so I was like, dude, you need to lower this to like 11.5, 11.6. Shorten the back end, because I think at that time probably 14.25 back ends were good.
And they were coming down from like 15s and stuff.
Yeah, and I wanted it like slammed at 14. Dude, slammed on that frame was like 15 and an eighth or something.
Yeah.
And so, that's why I was grinding it down. And so, they did that. Then they made the fueler, and I got a fueler. The day I got it, I sheared a 990 mount off the frame.
Billy Griggs wasn't doing his job right.
Yeah, that's why he welds Razor scooters now. But, I don't know, dude. I don't know if he built it or, some dude in the machine shop. Somebody built it, and it sucked. I called Robert because Woody was on vacation. I was like, I broke my frame. What do you mean you broke your frame? You just got it yesterday. I'm like, dude, brake mount broke off. And he was pissed. He was like, well, we don't have any. I was like, all right, then I don't ride. Well, we're paying you to ride. Okay, well, I don't have a bike with brakes, so I'm not riding. So he overnighted me another bump, or another fueler. And it was right around the time of my birthday. And so my buddy Art, for my birthday, got this crazy paint job done for me. And I know GT wouldn't have wanted that, but I didn't want to ride a burgundy bike. It was just gross. And he got that Mustang Mystic color. The Cobra Mystic color, which was like a green, and in a light it's purple, and another light it's blue. It was like $300 for the paint.
Yeah.
But, this dude, he was in the street pharmaceutical business, so he traded some stuff and got me a rad paint job. And, I just rode vert with a dude. That's all we ever did.
Yeah.
And got me the bike. I put it together on my birthday. Did a blunt 180 on the sub box at the skate park and sheared a 990 mount off. Called Robert the following day and was like, dude, my buddy just got a $300 paint job put on my bike, and I just sheared the 990 mount off the frame.
So somebody's not even like getting a deep enough weld on these things or something.
Dude, well, one thing we were thinking about is maybe they were welding them too slow and it was making the weld just way too brittle. Who knows?
Yeah.
Because it was such a tiny back end. It was so low because the standover height on that frame, the way
I remember those frames, they were low.
It was like 6.5 or 7 maybe. And that, I don't know. That may have been it. Who knows? But kept breaking them. And he sent me a hump and bump, and I rode that. And then the back end was twisted, and they gave me another one. And then that was like June of 99, and around that time I was like, this just isn't my thing. I wasn't happy. I hated the bike. I hated wearing NASCAR jerseys. I just wasn't into it. I wanted out of my contract. Started doing stupid shit so I'd get kicked off, but they wouldn't kick me off. Right around that time, new link fee came out, and I called Rick. I was like, hey dude, look, I'm not happy. Just tell me how much. I want to buy a frame. And all I wanted to do was go ride street. I didn't want to ride vert. I didn't want to do anything. I was just, as a lot of people that have ridden for GT have, I had GT burnout. Didn't want to do anything. I wanted nothing to do with the bike or the company. And so Rick actually just said, no, I'll send you a bike. And since I was on Little Devil at the time, we were co-sponsored by Profile. So I talked to Jeff Harrington. He sent me a box of Profile stuff. So I built a complete brand new bike. My GT stayed in the box until I did a show. I'd pull the bike out, do the show for the weekend, put it back in the box, and it would sit in the box until I did another set of shows. I started riding a standard like 3/4 of the way. No, probably halfway through the year in 99. And then I ended up kind of back on standard a little bit up until 2001 when I broke my back, and it was like, okay, you've kind of got to walk away for a while.
So maybe we'll hit some questions here in a sec, but really quick, let's let everybody know how you broke your back, because you told me, and I don't think very many people know you broke your back and what a weird situation it was.
Oh, it's definitely a weird situation. I was in my junior year of college and was doing an internship, business internship for a hospital here. The irony of that. And was designated, had designated parking in a parking garage across the street from said internship. And was going about my business and parked my car on the 8th floor, got into an elevator, and something happened with the elevator, and it dropped 8 floors. So,
what were you thinking? Like, I mean, that's like everybody's worst nightmare in an I mean, you get an elevator, you're like, oh, it's going to do this. But you got in that, did it start going down normal and just drop, or did you hit the button?
It started going normal, probably about half a floor, and then just dropped. Caught it about 4th floor, 5th floor, somewhere in there. And, it literally caught for a brief second and then just dropped.
Do you think if it wouldn't have caught, you might have died?
Oh, I would have definitely died, And the thing is at the time I was in really good shape. And, like my back doctor, he's just like, dude, if you wouldn't have been in the condition you were in, you would have died. It's that simple. Or you would have been paralyzed.
Yeah.
It was a very bizarre situation. It was at a hospital.
How long did it take for you to be able to even ride after that?
Dude, I think I snuck my bike out for the first time in like March of 2003.
But that was kind of the end of your pro riding.
I was kind of fading out anyway, and I was just, it wasn't about being a pro rider anymore. It was just about riding my bike and having fun.
Yeah.
I was going to college, and I was working, and I was enjoying that, but I was loving riding my bike again versus being forced to ride my bike.
Yeah.
And I was happy. I was very content. And then that happened November of 2001, and I didn't touch my bike until probably March of 2003. March or April, and I wasn't supposed to be riding, because we were knee deep in all the legal crap with it, and I would basically dress weird. I would leave my house with my bike I'd back out of my garage with my bike already loaded, and I'd drive kind of erratically. So if anyone was following me, because They have to. They've got to hire private investigators, make sure you're not faking. But it's kind of like, dude, I wasn't faking. I fell, 72 feet in an elevator.
Yeah.
But, they still, hey, they don't want to pay you if they don't have to. So they're going to find a way to get out of it. And so, I did what I could. And I would ride maybe once every couple of weeks. Nothing serious, but I would play around a little bit.
It's just nice to be back on your bike and just pedal.
That was my sanity, dude. Considering that I've been technically riding a bicycle since I was 2, it was my sanity. I didn't have a way to vent frustration, anything like that. And as much as people don't realize it, dude, especially for a lot of us, dude, our bikes are very detrimental in the way that our lives are and how they've evolved. Because without them, dude, we wouldn't be who we are. But 2, it's like, dude, they've helped us through so much lame shit.
Yeah.
Breakups, arguments with people,
money problems, everything. Yeah.
Anything, dude. Any kind of problem, dude. No matter what, dude. If you hop on your bike, you can be having the worst day ever, but you can ride your bike and you're stoked. even if you have a shitty day riding, it's like, dude, I still rode my bike today.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened. You know, I was forced to walk away up until, when was it finalized? It was finalized in like June of 2005. I mean, it was 4 years of dealing with that crap. And it sucked. It definitely sucked. It was a learning experience, and learn a lot of things about yourself. You learn a lot of things about people that you're friends and family with. But, you know, I guess it's part of life. You know, as much as it sucked, I definitely learned a lot about myself during that period. So, you just gotta hope hope for the best, and hope you learn something from it, and, you know, that it'll all work out eventually.
Okay. You want to go through some of these questions?
Let's do it.
All right, we're going to hit these Instagram questions. Somebody asked about why you rode a GT bump. We already covered that. Unseen History wants to know, what older BMX brand would you revive if you could? Maybe like you just like the feel of that brand, or you just like the way it was like. We know where this is going. What brand, if you could bring it back and just be like, or you think it'd just be continuous and never went out of business, what one do you think it would be?
Dude, I know that I'm probably on the same page with you, and I know the several other people, but I'd say Anarchic Adjustment. You know that,
we're going with the clothing brand, not a bike brand.
Dude, no reason to bring a bike brand. Dude, there's plenty of those now.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of them are doing their jobs, really well now. So it's
Anarchic Adjustment.
Anarchic, dude. Look at how influential it was. It was a cut and paste company that was so brilliant.
Yeah.
Dude, no one up until that point wanted stuff. Dude, I never gave a crap about what I wore, but the second I saw a t-shirt with that Anarchy logo on it, I was like, hell yes. Subliminal message, oh dude.
It's good.
You can't even screw with that. That stuff was just so cutting edge, but at the same time it was rad, because if you saw somebody with that, you identified with that person. That person rode or skated. Hands down.
Yeah.
So, without a doubt, yeah, I would say Anarchic. I mean, dude, why, I don't, dude, I wouldn't want to revive a bike brand. I mean, dude, look at it. Haro has a Sport Master coming out. Sabrosa has a Slayer bike coming out. What more would I need, dude?
Okay.
Those are one, favorite band ever, and two, like the bike that I built my life off of.
Yeah.
Is modernized that I can ride now.
So here's one. We got a lot of these. You probably know which one I'm going to say. We'll just do sick mats. Why haven't you and the rest of the homeless gang kicked Peric's ass into doing a box set? I mean, this question comes up yearly.
Dude, it comes off. It comes up so often, and I mean, dude, literally. I mean, honestly, we all question it. I probably don't want to make this worse on Peric, but dude, I talk to Peric probably 4 times a week, 5 times a week. Dude, I think the easiest way to say is we're all a lot older. We all have priorities. I don't necessarily feel that it's the biggest of priorities for Peric, because he's got to support himself. Granted, yes, it is brought up a lot more often than not. It has been discussed. I mean, dude, we had a discussion about it yesterday, as a matter of fact. I think it's one of those things where if everyone is patient with it, it will eventually happen. But I feel that the way that it is with Dave wants it on his own terms. He doesn't want it on everyone demanding it. He wants to do it, and it just show up and everyone be like, whoa, it's really been worked on. I will say that I probably have 3 minutes of straight footage that we could make a video part out of that he and I have filmed over the past decade. I know there's a handful of interviews that have already been done. Whether that surfaces in the next 2 years, that's up to Dave. But it does get discussed quite often. So I feel everyone has a better chance of seeing it than they realize, but it may be a little bit longer than everyone would like to wait.
Okay.
But, I definitely see it being one of those things that will happen. I think it's inevitable that it will eventually happen, but it is on Dave's own terms. It's not us deciding. It's not for us to decide. That is Dave's brainchild. That is Dave's baby. He's going to do it when he feels ready to do it.
Okay. Let's see. Scroll through some of these. The TJ Henderson. He goes, what's some of your favorite fakie tricks? Who inspired you to do fakie moves? What was it like being in standard style cats, and how did being on standard at the time influence the way you rode? So I think we covered a little bit of the standard stuff, but
yeah.
I mean, dude, what were your favorite fakie tricks?
I mean, one, dude, it's TJ asking this. I mean, dude, he's probably without a doubt, my favorite modern day, front break kid for sure. But it's one of those things where, how do I begin it? Without a doubt, my favorite fakie trick is so hard to say. Probably like, I mean, if we're going to fakie from fakie, from fakie to fakie, sorry, probably be like fakie to toothpick to fakie, or like, dude, fakie 360 nose picks were really fun, and dude, I mean, even like fakie to fakie, opposite ice pick grind to fakie was really rad. The one that he and I have discussed that I promised him I would do, but so far I suck and I haven't filmed it for him, which is cab to ice pick to fakie. Did a handful of those back in the day. Definitely one of those things that I would love to do again, but it was just such... Dude, I think I spent 2 nights in a row just working on that all night to do it. Person that influenced me to ride, to do a lot of fakie stuff. One, I mean, I already did a lot of fakie stuff on vert. Just fakie airs were so much fun. But I think the person that really pushed me to start actually running a free coaster and really try to see where I could push my fakie riding was Eddie Roman. The one person that you and I have already talked about it today, but it's like, he's the one dude that does not get credit for it. Summer of '88, at the Austin Tulip Comp, I watched Eddie fakie hop off like a 4-foot tall ledge. Watch him half cab off a 4-foot tall ledge. No one was doing that. I mean, dude, he was running a coaster break on top of it. And it is one of those things where it was just, dude, I think it was kind of the national progression of, one, seeing that being possible, and at the same time, like I've said plenty today, of riding with skaters. I think, riding backwards was just the natural progression of pushing BMX forward. So many kids do fakie tricks now. And it's so much fun, but it's such a challenge because it's, I think I will definitely steal Kurt's statement, or Kurt's comment on it, of it's not riding forward. So it's, it's definitely something that I wanted to push and, see where I could really go with it. But I mean, there's so many dudes that are pushing it now. You've got TJ, you've got Bobby, you've got Patty, you've got all these dudes doing these, Rob Ridge, dude. You've got these dudes that are just still pushing it on a level that, you see stuff and you're like, and I will say this, the dudes that I see doing this stuff, it makes me so stoked because they're doing some of the stuff and dialing in some of the stuff that, I would try maybe back then and didn't do, or maybe I did it once or twice and never did it again. And it's rad. It's seeing that progression has continued, and there's dudes that still are stoked to do fakie tricks. You know, especially mini ramp. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, that's my one thing that I love riding is mini ramp, probably more than anything. So, seeing that is rad. Wow. Favorite standard rider, is that what it was?
I think that's in there too.
Wow. Dude, who? Dude, honestly, Frymouth.
That's a good one.
Doubt.
That's a good one.
Dude, Frymouth killed it. I mean, I remember first time I saw Baco 5, dude. I mean, I'd seen Baco 4 and I really didn't pay that much of attention. Baco 5 was an eye-opener. It was like, who's the dude with the ponytail on the white bike that fucking kills it?
Yeah.
And honestly, dude, I don't know if BMX was ready for Frymouth at that point. Because he was a mix of tech and burly that people had yet to see. And yeah, it was just, dude, without a doubt, it would be Frymouth. I don't think there's any other person other than Frymouth.
All right, perfect. Let me scroll through. Ryan Corrigan wants to know who was the craziest member of the Homeless Trash crew. Now, this could be craziest person or maybe the craziest riding.
I'm gonna go with craziest of riding because I think that would craziest of human beings.
It might be hard to pick.
Can of worms.
And that whole crew seemed pretty crazy.
Everyone was kind of, dude, we're all kind of batshit crazy at the same time. But, Goot, I mean, there's not a...
So Kevin Gutierrez.
Hell yes, dude. Absolutely. It's Kevin Gutierrez. There is not a person that I've ever seen ride a bike that did not give a shit what he got out of it more than Kevin. But the stuff that Kevin did still to this day makes no sense. Kevin, and I mean, dude, I know I'm not the only one who will say this. Kevin was not the most graceful of riders, but yet could make a trick happen. He wasn't one of the dudes that would manual and then foot plant 180 out of it because his front wheel was dropping down. If his front wheel was dropping down, he was going to go into some decade rock walk, boomerang thing to nose pick to 27 hop, back wheel hops to decade to something. He figured out a way. Goot figured out a way to make the easiest tricks the most complicated tricks.
Yeah.
Dude. Riding down a handrail. No one did that in 1992. He rode across a single coping spine like it was a joke. Blunt no-handers, or a Bubica no-handers.
He did like a gapped rail on Homeless Trash.
He did gapped rail. He did he did handrail look down. He feebled the red rail. Dude, I think everyone would way much have rather 50-50 the red rail than feebled that thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, dude, he's one of the people that I've probably known the longest out of BMX, and I don't think there's ever been a time that Kevin didn't amaze me with how he pulled something out of his ass with the greatest of ease. I mean, you look at it and it's like, dude, I mean, I saw him go on tour for GT before I was on GT. And he would sketch something out in the middle of a show and turn it into something so ridiculous and so hard that you couldn't comprehend how the hell he did it. And the thing was, he'd get done and he'd just laugh. It was like, whatever. And it's like, how, dude? How? He was... I think Kevin, honestly, is one of the most gifted BMX riders ever. Because he knows how to turn something into nothing. Or nothing into something, I'm sorry. But he knows how to. I mean, if something's going downhill, he's going to find a way to turn it into something.
Yeah.
Something awesome. Something that everyone that is in a crowd or whoever's on the deck, whatever, is going to be like, that was insane. And still to this day, dude. I mean, when he does ride, dude, when he rode a Toast a couple years, didn't he do like 360 blunt? I don't think he'd probably done a rollback in probably a decade.
No, he did a rock walk drop in.
He did a rock walk drop in, which is...
And didn't he do a Miami hopper drop in?
No, he didn't do that.
Didn't somebody do that? I don't know.
I think somebody tried.
Yeah, anyway.
Who knows? But
okay.
Yeah, hands down, goo, dude, without a doubt. There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
Brad 4130. I mean, this. I don't know if you'll even be able to count this number. How many bikes have you had totaling in your BMX career? And then, what bike was your favorite? We got a couple more after this, so let's not. This one we could spend 1,000 years on.
I mean, dude, we've already covered 1988. It had 18 frames. I mean, dude, throughout that, dude, honestly, it's had to be in the hundreds. I mean, without a doubt.
Okay.
I mean, I think when I rode for Homeless, I had like 5 frames alone, and I mean that wasn't bad back then. But yeah, the Haro period, the Wilkerson period, Bully alone was 4-month period on Bully, and I had 4 bikes. So it was definitely a lot.
Hey, Wilkerson's batting 100. You only rode 1, bro.
But that geometry was...
It's perfect. No. It's perfect. Anyway, next question.
but favorite bike, dude. I mean, that's such a difficult question because, dude, I'm such a BMX nerd in a sense where it's like there's so many bikes that I love to just stare at. Dude, 90 Sport. I mean, that thing changed Haro from a straight down tube company to a GT down tube company. And I mean, you look at the Airmaster. Dude, I look at that frame and I'm like, that thing is sick.
And you keep talking about the Airmaster, so we might think the Airmaster is
I would probably say the Airmaster is definitely up there. I mean, dude, the Bully was awesome though. The Bullies were one of the best looking frames with the biggest piles of shit ever.
Because Taiwan fucked Darrell.
Oh yeah, well,
I'm sure there's more into it.
Yeah, but I mean, dude, those frames. I mean, dude, Haro Freestyler. I mean, that was the first bike. That was the bike that got me stoked on freestyle. Dude, honestly, I will say this. I think I can honestly say though, favorite bike ever, even though how much I love all those other bikes, 87 or 88 Haro Sport. My black, turquoise, and chrome 87 Team Sport I loved that bike. Dude, you know what? Screw it. 88 black, blue, chrome Sport.
All right.
With half chrome, half black knee savers and Super Pros. That was my favorite bike because that bike just looks sick.
All right. Casey Smithsonian. How do you explain your longevity in BMX and your extensive knowledge? And do you have any future plans for involvement in the BMX industry?
Wow. Longevity. I think the longevity is basically stupidity because my body is a complete and total wreck. But I still ride, it's what keeps me young. I think my wife even will tell you that. Without my bike, I would probably be even a more miserable and grumpy, salty individual than I already am. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just, trying to take as good a care of my body as I can, which is kind of hard doing this, but just going and enjoying it, and staying positive with all of that and knowing that, I have limits. I know that I cannot go right now and recreate my section in, Nowhere Fast. I know it's not possible. I know that I'm 42 years old. I'm not capable of doing what I was doing when I was 24 and I was riding my bike every day.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of what it is right now. It's like, dude, I know that I have limits and I'm not willing to push them beyond that. Okay, there was longevity.
And do you have any plans?
Well, I know that, and that was I know the plans. What was the other part of it?
That was it.
Was it?
Do you have any plans for future involvement in the BMX industry?
Technically, I kind of already do. A lot of people don't really realize this, but there's a lot of stuff that I do behind the scenes with Ronnie Bonner and everyone at Shadow and Sparky's and Sabrosa and whatnot. Most of my involvement is really with Shadow. There was a brief period of some product development working on free coasters with Byron and GL. But now it's basically a lot of times when Shadow sponsors an event, they want to build ramps or something for an event. I'm one of the people that, Ronnie gives me an idea and I figure it out. Hey, it's like, hey, we want to do this. How do we go about it? And I'll do the drawings and figure it all out. Sparky's parking lot comps, I've done all of those. The past 5 years, I think I've designed the courses. Shadow Coffin, me and my buddy Jake designed it. And who would have ever thought a coffin-shaped grind box would create such craziness? I think probably, in my opinion, it's probably one of the most gratifying things I've ever gotten out of BMX, because it's like, dude, we drew up the plans and there's tons of these things across the world, and it started out as a joke. We never knew that people would be that stoked on a grind box. So yeah, it's kind of that, and just trying to help those brands stay going. I've done a little bit of stuff with Haro with assisting with some of the history projects and helping them do some stuff when they did Texas Toast, sponsor Texas Toast, helping them create their events and such. Being involved in the industry full time, I highly doubt that would happen. But there are the brands that I do have my loyalty to, that I will, that I've helped, and I will continue to help them because they support me. I'm going to support them, and it's anything I can do to help continue to keep BMX alive and pushing it forward. I'm going to do it, as long as it's not a severe conflict of interest. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Last question. Tom at Empire wants to know, which I don't even know what this means. Troy Tiro or Bo Cobb? Is it Bo Cobb or?
It's Bo Cobb and Troy Tiro.
Okay.
Shit, dude. I don't know. I mean,
is these baseball players?
No, dude. These are actual dudes I competed against in AFA.
Oh, okay. I thought Bo Cobb was a baseball player. I was like, what is he asking?
I don't know much about baseball, but I can tell you it's Ty Cobb.
Oh, it's Ty Cobb, son of a bitch.
But, dude, that's so hard to say because...
So these dudes that used to compete against
you? I competed against both of them, yeah. Bo was from Beeville and rode with Todd and Eric Evans and ended up being sponsored by RevCore. And Troy was from Houston, they both had pretty bitchin' mullets for a period of time, and hung out with this dude, Eddie Cooper, who had a couple photos in freestyling back in the day, and drove a primered gray Chevy Love mini truck that was lowered, and pretty sure all he listened to was Metallica, Master of Puppets.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that, but yeah, dude was completely out of his freaking mind. But he did really good Randy Tishman style pretzel airs. If we're gonna go competing wise, I would probably say that Bo and I probably had the most battles because I think I competed against Bo a little bit more than I did Troy. Both really, really good riders, but I don't know how to answer if it's who's a better competitor, who is harder to try to beat. I don't know. I mean, they were both really good dudes. They were both rad. I mean, they both went, 8-9 feet, did a lot of variations and stuff. But at the same time, they were both a little bit older than me, so I didn't compete against them that much. I mean, if Tom really wants to break it out, we can definitely go like the Jarrett Ganstow route and say the ultimate like trend bike source Proho. I don't know. If we're gonna say who's better, I don't think I can honestly give you an assessment.
All right,
they were both rad. They were both rad. I mean,
you and Tom are gonna have to squabble that one out.
that's all right. We'll fight to death.
All right.
Except he has guns. I don't have any of those. But yeah, I mean, both those dudes were rad, and I'd love to, see both of them on the platform of a 6-foot bowl, since that's all we seem to have here in San Antonio anymore to session with. So, be rad. But yeah, I don't know how to answer Tom's question other than they were both awesome riders, and two dudes from Texas that probably definitely didn't get half the credit or notoriety they deserved.
All right. Well, that's all I think the questions. I think we're done. That's a wrap.
Sweet.
All right.